if you're pounding a ton of food and you're a bodybuilder. Now, you want to manage insulin sensitivity as well, too, with the growth hormone. So you sort of have all these factors that you need to keep in mind and that you need to be aware of as a bodybuilder. So you want to manage insulin sensitivity. You want to make sure that you have enough insulin to keep up with the carbohydrates that you're taking in. I'll see older bodybuilders that are throwing more and more anabolics at it, and I don't think that's the issue. I think it's nutrient uptake is the issue. I just don't think your body is utilizing the food that you're putting in efficiently, because there's probably some sort of pancreatic insufficiency or insulin resistance or whatever you have it.
So if you're advising or talking to somebody or working with a client of yours, how do you get them to understand what you just said, to keep the weight on the muscle?
Yeah, I mean...
All right, what's going on, guys? We're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Paul Barnett. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, cool. He was referred to me by Justin Harris, and then I started going through your content, and I had to have you come out. The biggest thing I want to talk about is you're a muscle nerd, so I got to put that out there. It was like in the bio, like muscle nerd, master's level NPC competitor. What's intriguing to me is you trained seriously from like 16 to 32.
Yep.
Then you took a break. I'm guessing here, was it 44 when you started training again?
42, I kind of got back into the gym.
So about a decade.
Yeah.
Okay. So a decade away, then you come back and just, there's a lot to talk about here, but coming back, you do one show, you put 85 pounds on after the show, which is one topic there. And why did you come back? Let's just start off there.
I got divorced.
there's a good one. That works.
I had to get back in the game. So
it's as simple as that.
As simple as that. Actually, I tore my ACL at the same time. I was playing basketball, popped my ACL, and I got back into the gym, started working out, kind of got bit by the bug again.
So during this time off, I assume job, work, life, all that other stuff.
You know how it goes. Yeah. Kids, work, business, running a business. I had a series of injuries in the gym because I used to train really heavy and do some stupid stuff in the gym. I worked with Dante Trudell when I was younger.
Okay.
And when Dante was still training people. And I did DC training for years. And I worked with Dante, and I don't know, I just lost the urge for it, had kids, got fat, started a business, and then decided I had enough. It was time to get back. I went to a class reunion, and I saw a girl I hadn't seen in a long time, and she told me, she's like, "Didn't you used to be a bodybuilder?"
Okay, so you were bodybuilding in that before.
Yeah, I was the perpetual perma-bulker.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you would want to call it bodybuilding, but I would say power building.
Not competing,
no. I was more of a power builder, heavy lifting, bodybuilding style of training, I guess. But if you're familiar with Dante's stuff, you know how it goes.
So when you came back, did you come back more into Dante's?
I tried, but I am so beat up, and I had to completely reinvent how I train. I did for a couple of years, and I don't even think I've talked to Dante, but Dante doesn't lift with the same heavy weights now that we used to. So it's all within a rep range. But I switched up and went to a completely different style of training. I know you had Dr. Mike Israetel on recently. And I have kind of gone with his style of programming that I'm using now, more of a periodized volume style training. And my thought process was it allows me to train and progress without beating my joints up so bad.
Yeah.
So really at this point in my life, staying in the gym is more important to me than pushing heavy weights. The weights are relative. I'm still probably lifting heavy compared to a lot of people, but not what I used to. It's not the type of thing that I used to. I use volume as a form of progression now.
Okay, so that's what I want to get into. So let's kind of dial back a little bit, because a lot of people listening may not know what dog crap DC training is, and there's a lot of people who get all mad when I say it's kind of like HIIT training, because it is, but it isn't, but yet it still fucking is. So with that as the base beforehand, just run through classic training before you stop training.
Yeah, I mean, it was the typical Dante stuff. I mean, we were doing a push-pull legs routine. Dante, everything is to absolute failure and beyond. It was a lot of rest pause stuff. So, I mean, if you're familiar with Dante's training at all, you would do an all-out set to failure. You take 10 deep breaths. I don't remember what it was. It's like a 30-second break, and then you do a rest pause set. So for example, if I'm doing bench press, I might do 8 reps to absolute failure. Take a 30-second break, do 3 more reps, another 30-second break, do 2 more reps, another 30-second break, maybe another rep, and then do a forced rep or a negative or a static hold. And that was Dante's really kind of, and then you're done.
Yeah, did you do the loaded stretching with that?
Yeah, we did the loaded stretching, the extreme stretching and stuff too. I still do that.
Yeah.
I still do the loaded stretching.
All right, so you had 1 or 2 exercises per body part.
Yeah, and you know, it technically, I mean, he'll say it's 1 set, but it's really multiple sets. You're just taking a 30-second break between the set, but it's one balls out, all out, intense set really at the end of the day.
All right, and when you were doing that, were you controlling the tempo of the set at all, or just going?
Yeah, no, it's a very controlled tempo. That's one of his things, is very controlled tempo. So you have to keep the parameters of the rep the same. So like one of the things I used to always preach is improve, don't get better at cheating. So moving the weight faster and getting more reps that way doesn't count. So it's a good controlled negative. I don't know that I actually timed it on a stopwatch, but it was probably like a 2 to 3 second negative, explosive positive, and then in rinse, wash, repeat, doing that over and over and over again. But you keep the parameters the same so you can actually gauge your progress, and then you're having a war with the logbook every time you go in. So if I did with my total rest pause, let's say if I did my 12 total reps counting the rest pauses, the next time I come in, I'm going to try to get 13 reps, and then when I hit the top of that rep range, then you add a 5-pound plate to the bar. So it is true progressive overload style training.
How many times a week per body part were you using or going?
It's very minimal with him. So it was when I was doing it, it was 4 days a week. So it was push pull leg. So you end up, if I remember correctly, you end up hitting everything 3 times in a 2-week period of time.
Okay, I've trained that way in variations of that way, on and off throughout almost all my life, outside of the pure, West Side powerlifting time. But even some of the accessories are done that way. What I'm intrigued with is what part of that, when you came back, was harder for you to recover from?
It's just my joints just did not want to cooperate with me with the heavy weights. I started the thing with the DC style training is you get really strong, real quick. And I just found that my joints were just killing me training that way. And now talking to Dante, and maybe I should have gone back and done this, was push the rep range up. He's like, well, if your joints bother you, then just go to a higher rep range. Don't have your working set be between 6 to 8 reps. Maybe do 12 to 15. Yeah. Find a rep range or find an exercise that you're comfortable with. Maybe not do barbell bench. Maybe go to do the hammer strength machine and progress through that. So that was sort of his adaptation as you age. It's
all right. I see what's going on. So you were still sticking with the real raw compound movements.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy doing compound movements. My body just doesn't like doing.
No, I get it. Because when I would default back into something like that, it was usually to give my joints a rest. Yeah. Which is kind of why I'm sitting here like, oh, wait a minute, what's different? Where I wasn't doing those movements. I would do ones that were more joint friendly, and my tempo was probably slower than what yours was as well. And I didn't worry about the log fucking book. I worried more about the effort, because the logbook becomes a tricky thing when you're fucked up. When you're a washed up meathead, the logbook can be a fucking terrible thing.
Yeah, I still, sometimes I'll log stuff, but I've kind of thrown it in the trash now because it is a mind fuck. Because I am a very competitive person. Yes. And it kills me to know that I'm not pushing than what I was before. You can get obsessed with the logbook, that is for sure.
I think as you may correct me if this is true for yourself, as you get older, it's more about a range of the weight that you need to stay in. Right. Not so much trying to break it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten now, I don't do a lot of compound movements anymore. It's mostly machines and dumbbells. So I don't do a lot of barbell, I should say barbell movements. I don't do a lot of barbell movements anymore. So I've mostly stuck with machines and and dumbbells, but for what I would consider my heavier exercises, I'm in the 10 to 12 rep range. And I kind of live in that rep range for what you would call an accessory exercise or an isolation movement. I'm more like in the 15 to 20 rep range now.
And then that's periodized over a period.
It's periodized over a period. Yeah. So the Israel program, and I don't follow exactly what he did, but I read his book. I don't know if you've read it, The Scientific Principles of Hypertrophy. Yeah. It really kind of opened my mind up to a different way of training. Like I never had considered volume as a way of progressing too. So that what I'll do now is I'll take a weight, like let's say I have 100 pounds on exercise X. I'll take that weight over a 6-week block, and I'll add more sets to it. So I might start off with 2 sets this week, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6 at the end of my block. And then when I finish that block, I'll take a deload and I'll start all over again with 5 more pounds and push weight that way. So I'm still progressing weight, but I'm progressing volume over that period instead of trying to push more reps or push more weight each week.
I think that also is a way to allow you to stretch the progression over a longer period of time. Yeah. Coming from the background I come from, my brain operates in 3-week mesocycles or 3-week waves. And some exercises, if they're super heavy, super hard, I'm going to change them every 3 weeks. But there's other ones, if I'm doing them for hypertrophy, I want to run those for longer than 3 weeks. So I want to run them for 9 or 12 weeks. And I can do what you're talking about, increase the volume over a period of time. Another thing I'll do is I'll manipulate the tempo. So I'll start the first few weeks with it, I don't want to say super slow, like a 4-second eccentric, hold, for 1 or 2, and then 2-second concentric, then flex like a motherfucker for 2 seconds before bringing it back. So it's way longer where I'm pretty much 1 rep shy of failure, about 6, maybe 7 reps, even with light shit, just because the tension, of all the flexing. I get through about 2-3 weeks of that, then I can actually bring it to a more bodybuilding type tempo and get another. So now all of a sudden, instead of something I might have like blew my nut on in 4 or 5 weeks, I just build in like 2 or 3 weeks before, as almost conditioning type thing. And then I can stretch it all out. And that, for me, that seemed to be, it sounds weird, it seemed to be more joint friendly for me than changing the movements more frequently, which sounds a little fucked up, right? Because normally you would think it'd be the opposite. And I don't know if it's just because of with the tighter tempo, maybe there's less joint. There's definitely less load, right? But when you get into, that was a question I had to answer for the crew cast the other day, is which is worse, heavy weights on your joints or high reps on your joints, and nobody can answer that question for me.
Well, yeah, I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, I've seen some guys that are ripping heavy weights and continue to do so and seem to be just fine. Yeah. I think a lot of it is form and technique.
Yes.
That would be, how your form and technique are, it would, just thinking of it from a scientific perspective with physics and placing the load on the joint rather than the muscle, I think is where the wear and tear comes in. And
that's a good topic right there, because that's a motherfucker to try to teach people.
Yeah.
So if you're advising or talking to somebody or working with a client of yours, how do you get them to understand what you just said, to keep the weight on the muscle?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of young guys they struggle with. It's the the ego lifting.
Yeah.
They want to heave the weights around. But then there are examples of people that ego lift and are huge. I mean, I look at a guy like Branch Warren as a guy who just has terrible form, but the dude looks incredible.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I don't think he's been that broken up.
No.
I think he's done well. So, I mean, that worked for him. It could be just his unique genetics, how he's put together, that he can handle that, and then whereas I might not be able to.
I would still say that there's a benefit of learning how to train stricter, more in the muscle, because let's say they are both equal, or even I call it muscle fucking. Even if muscle fucking the weight's up, let's say it's better. We can teach anybody to do that. But you can't teach anybody to be able to control the weight and keep it on the muscle. So it's a skill, right? So it's another tool in the toolbox that's worth learning just to have in case it's needed. For example, say you muscle fuck weights up all the time, get big as fuck, but then you strain something. You're still going to train. Normally this is probably how we learn how to do it, right? You fuck something up, then the only way you can train is to keep it more
around it.
Is that the answer? Just go get hurt?
Yeah, my shoulders are my shoulders are completely wrecked, man, and I'm constantly working around my wrecked shoulders. But I think just peeling it back and thinking about it, bodybuilding and powerlifting, or bodybuilding and strength training, are two completely different things. So strength athletes, you're just trying to get the weight from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. So what's good form for powerlifting might not be good form for bodybuilding.
Yes.
Whereas with bodybuilding, at least in my thought process, I want to evoke an adaptation. Hypertrophy is the adaptation that we're trying to do, and it's placing a load on the muscle and eliciting a adaptive response. So I want to keep myself in the gym, to keep progressing. Bodybuilding is a long game. We were talking about this earlier before you came in, but you're looking at, to get from just an average gym bro to standing on a pro stage, it's probably 10 years of dedicated work. Minimum, I would think 10 years. So if you are tearing yourself apart, if your health goes to shit, your joints are wrecked before you're never going to stand on a pro stage and compete. I've seen so many guys get to the national stage and just never make it further, or get their pro card and never get further because they've blown out their health or wrecked their joints or something along that line. So for me, with bodybuilding, you have to play the long game, and you have to be intelligent with your training, and placing more load on the joint or increasing leverage is not what we're looking for in bodybuilding. We want to place the load on the muscle. So that, for me, that's the part that I try to impart on bodybuilders. It's wild to me because powerlifters and strength athletes are very detailed in their training. And bodybuilders are usually complete dumbasses when it comes to training. It's like you never, powerlifters, there seems to be very strict form to programming, and a lot of guys follow the similar type, but there's no programming in bodybuilding.
Yeah, well, that's what there was a clip that Justin showed me when he came out where I was talking to him, I think, and I said that training for bodybuilding is relatively easy, and people took it out of context because the programming side of it, as far as the training and the weights and what you do in the gym, doesn't have to be as thought out as what it would be for strength sports. It doesn't mean it's fucking easy. You know how the internet is. It doesn't mean it's fucking easy.
Right.
It's still hard work that has to be done in there. Where one thing I think the strength athletes miss, though, is yes, they have the certain sections of their program, of the training day, say that the first 2 movements, 3 movements, whatever it is, those are dedicated to making that lift stronger. But then with most strength athletes, not all, because some just do just the main lifts and that's it, but with most, they have other exercises they do towards the end for hypertrophy, right? To me, when they're not training those like a bodybuilder, right, and keeping the load on the muscle instead of the joint, then they're taking a stimulus and adding it to their recovery demands, which are already high because of the main stuff they already did, that the exchange isn't equal. Like if you take it off the joints, you learn how to train this like a bodybuilder, and you leave your ego at the door. You use 15 fucking pounds for your side raises, or 20 pounds, but you actually do them right instead of muscle fucking up 80s. Then there's less joint wear and tear, I believe, and probably better progress than they would get hammering all this stuff. And that's where, when I asked earlier, how do you teach the people that you're working with how to keep it on the muscle, because it's one of the things I'll do with the clinics I have out here is, yes, I show all that other stuff, but then when we get into accessory stuff for the joints and shit like that, there's still cable flies, machine flies, stuff like that. You need to do that shit, with intent and muscle contraction and all this. And it's such a strange world for a lot of the strength athletes because they've never done it. You know, people that have a bodybuilding background, it's like, boom, they got it. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to teach if all they know is moving the weight. The other caveat is the programmed number of reps, right? So if it says 4 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 10, they're going to approach that set, I'm fucking doing 10, right? So if everything's under load, it's on the muscle, right? Your tempo's going well, you might be at 6, and if you keep the tempo the same, 7 might be it, 8 might be it. And if it's a bodybuilder, as long as they're falling in that 8 to 12, a little bit range, fuck it, the set's over.
Yep.
They're not going to get to that 7 and have it start to get close to, actually you start to get close to failure as a bodybuilder, you're like, fuck yeah, it's like you're about ready to come. You're right where you want to be. You're in the progress zone. You know, if you're a strength athlete, you start to get close to failure, you're like, fuck it, I got to do 10. Then you start heaving the shit, and as I explained, you just kick the can down the road. You know, so if you need to get those optimal reps, the last reps that are going to help with the muscle growth, and you just muscle fuck the last 3, you just kick the can down. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Where that's where I have a hard, because the number, like the number fucks them up. Where old school, probably before you stop training, a lot of the programs would say, you know, 3 sets 10 to 12, 3 sets, you know, 10 to 15. And then you knew, okay, there's a range. Somewhere in this range, I need to be like a rep shy of failure. Nobody trains to failure. You know what I say? You kind of do. Right. If it's DC training, you kind of do. But you know, if you tried another one, you weren't going to do it. And that was in that range. Then it changed maybe like a decade ago and became these straight numbers, like 10 or 12. And I don't think people ask their coaches what that 12 represents. Because you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I give people a rep range.
Yeah.
And I tell people you stop when mechanical, I call it mechanical failure, where your form starts to break down.
Yeah. And
a lot of times, like, you know, Dr. Mike has his reps and reserve system. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how you quantify that, to be honest with you. I mean, what some people would consider 2 reps in reserve, or failure for me might be 1 rep in reserve. So yeah. I don't know how you quantify that. So I just, you know, I think it's simple for people. I tell them, where you're getting to the point where you feel like your form is being compromised, that's when the set ends. Mm-hmm. And with young guys, I think sometimes it just takes time in the gym to learn how to connect with a muscle. It's just, you have to train with intention, and it just takes practice. Sometimes it takes a couple of years. Like I see, we were talking about it earlier when I was in here filming with Sheena earlier. But the like back is one I see a lot of young bodybuilders struggle with. You go to any local bodybuilding show and you see so many dudes with crappy backs. Yeah, yeah. And I see a lot of guys in the gym heaving around heavy weights on rows and stuff, but they're not actually activating their lats or their rhomboids. They're just basically doing super heavy arm curls.
Yes, yes.
So, you know, and I can get why, you know, it's not like you're using your lats in everyday life, really. It's they're there for hanging from trees, you know, when we were monkeys. But it's you know, so that would be an example of a body part that's hard to connect with. Me, I always struggle with my arms. Arms were always a challenge for me. And my arms didn't start to grow until I lightened my weight up and started training with a little more intention.
What helped you know that it wasn't moving in the right way?
When my arms started growing.
Well, I know that, but with intention, you said earlier, like with the RIR, you know, sometimes it's hard to quantify. A lot of these things with training are hard to quantify unless you anchor it. You know, like what does it mean to that person, or if you're working with an athlete, then how is that anchored? Like you anchor it. So with intention, if we're talking about intention, how would you anchor intention if you were working with an athlete or another lifter?
Feeling the muscle, actually having a contraction, actually having a pump in the muscle is, to me, that's probably the first cue I would look at. You know, if you aren't feeling the muscle, if you're not feeling a contraction, if you're not feeling a pump, then you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like I'll hear guys like, you know, I get lat pumps when I do when I do back. And I'll hear a lot of young guys, I'll ask them if they feel it in their back, and they'll be no, I don't feel it in my back. Or they'll, sometimes I'll actually, if I'm training somebody in person, it's a little easier. Like I'll give them cues and I'll show them how to spread their scapula and pull their scapula back to actually get their lats to activate, things like that you can't do over an email or whatever. But sometimes I'll have guys film themselves, send their exercises to me. I'll take a look at it and dissect it and send it back to them.
Can you see from there with the lat work?
Yeah, with the lat work, a lot of times I'll see like it's hard. You'll see guys on rows where there's no actual, the shoulder's not actually dropping forward. There's no rotation in the scapula. And for me, that's a dead giveaway on a row that you're not actually activating anything.
Yeah.
It's just an arm curl. Yeah. At the end of the day.
The pump comment makes me laugh because I 100% believe what you're saying, but it's when I used to train with John, he would say, "Man, you pumped." I'm like, "Don't ever fucking ask me that again." It's just one of those weird bodybuilding things.
I remember John talking about back, and that was a cue that I always remember is pulling with your elbows.
Yeah.
And not with your arm, pulling with your elbows.
Yeah, which is in the powerlifting world, I will tell somebody to pull with their hands because I want them to get used to pulling a bar with their hands. Yep. In the bodybuilding, it's what's the intent? Yep. Now, if the intent, if it's to lift fucking heavy weights, it would be that. If the intent is for lats, hypertrophy, it's the elbows. And you can see, unless they're just like Jabba the Hutt, you can kind of see, if the back's moving or if the arms
you can 100%
moving,
see it. You can see it
pretty easy.
Yeah, I had a kid in my gym recently where I showed him, and what I did is videoed him doing rows because you can't see yourself doing rows. Yeah. And I wanted to show him, I'm like, let me show you what's going on with your back, and I showed him. Where you could see almost no movement in his back. He was pulling completely with his arms, and then I gave him a couple cues to fix it, and then I showed him the video afterwards, and he's like, "Holy crap! I never really knew that." But I think it's also hard to train and activate a muscle you can't see too. So I think that's why another reason why people have a hard time. I also have guys pose between sets. I know you kind of look like a douchebag posing between sets, but I also think that helps too. I know that's, I think it's Hani Rambod that has people do that, but I think that helps bodybuilders to connect with the muscles. So, if you're doing lats, practice lat spreads between sets.
Yeah. So something that I'll have lifters do with the intent of the lats is to find the stretch in the lats before they start the movement. Yep. And then when they start the movement, start it with no momentum, instead of, because that's going to pull here, and then that can also help determine if you're working, the lats, or if you're working the traps and upper back. Like, where's the intent? Is it pulling the shoulder blades together, or is it trying to pull the lats down? Yep. And with the power lifters, there's different reasons for both. And having them know the difference of where that intent's supposed to be, from what I've seen, works so much better if I can get them like on a chest supported row, something, and they just where do you feel the stretch? My shoulders. Maybe you want to move, pull your chest up, whatever you need to do.
Well, you can see it with bodybuilders when they pose. The guys that don't know how to activate their lats can't do lat spreads. They can't spread their scapula. You'll see it all the time, and so I think that helps them to learn how to do that. If you get that corrected with the training and with the posing.
When getting back to where we jumped off on this part was when you went back to the gym after this huge break, when did you decide that you wanted to actually step on stage?
It was probably about a year in, and I kind of got bitten by the bug because I had always intended to compete when I was in my 20s, but I was like, one more year. Okay. And I had a couple false starts where I dieted down for shows. Skip Hill helped me diet down one time, and I was like, yeah, screw this. I'm going back to being big. But I think that's like young guys that I work with, I tell them just don't worry about it. Just try to get on the stage. If you want to be a bodybuilder, it's important to get on the stage once a year. Get out there and do it once a year. If not for nothing else, for practice, you get the rebound afterwards. everybody gets stuck in this mindset of perma-bulking, you know, where I just need to be a little bit bigger, and then you never end up getting on stage. And you never end up progressing, too. Some of the, you know, Justin can attest to that. Some of the best progress you ever make in bodybuilding is the rebound after a show.
Yeah. Or at least, even if you're not going to compete, just dieting down enough to get the rebound afterwards it's a big thing.
Yeah, my guys that I work with, if hypertrophy is the intent, if depending on where their body fat is at, but I'll have them do one hard diet, one hard cut per year. And
how far will you have them go down if they're not going to compete?
You don't have to go all the way down to like 5% competition lean, but I would say, you know, somewhere in the 8 to 10% body fat range, and I think that's good enough. But the leaner you get, the better the rebound is, and the more runway you have for putting on weight. So, you know, if you're at 5% body fat and you gain 5% putting on mass, you're still 10% body fat.
Yeah.
Right. So you have more runway to gain size, and as the fatter you get, you know, your testosterone works less efficiently. So the more of it aromatizes, and you have, you know, it's the whole P ratio thing, whether you buy into that or not. But the fatter you are, the less of the weight gain that you actually have is actual muscle tissue.
What do you mean by P ratio?
There's this, I forget, there's a study where it's a scale. The fatter you are, the higher the ratio of weight gain is actual adipose versus lean tissue. So whereas like if you're, and I'm just throwing out arbitrary numbers, so whereas if you're like, say at 5% body fat, 80% maybe of your weight gain might be lean tissue versus fat tissue. Whereas if you're at 20%, it might be flipped the other way around. 20% of your weight gain might be actual contractile tissue, 80% might be body fat.
Why do you think that is?
I think some of it is hormones, you know. So I mean, estrogen definitely plays a role in fat gain. You know, so the fatter you are, the more of your testosterone gets converted into estrogen. Your aromatase is higher, so I think that's part of it. So you can, you know, manipulate it somewhat, you know, through how you're, you know, handling PEDs and things like that. So that's a way of manipulating it, but I do think that that's part of it. Insulin sensitivity probably goes to crap the fatter you get to.
Shittier you're eating.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of factors in there as well.
So you do the first show. When did you hook up with Justin?
God, I'm trying to think. I think I've been with Justin 3.5, 4 years now.
So
3.5 years ago.
So 2 years in?
Yeah, it was a little over a year in with Justin. I did the first show.
And why? Why did you reach out to him?
I've seen Justin from afar for a long time. I remember him back on the message boards
way back
20 years ago, and the videos of him squatting with Kukla.
Yeah.
So I was aware of him, and I really, the reason why I connected with Justin is because I wanted to learn about carb cycling. And I had read a lot on carb cycling, and carb cycling to me made the most sense for dieting for a bodybuilding perspective. And Justin, I feel like, is probably the most knowledgeable person out there when it comes to carb cycling. I mean, really, it's sort of his invention, really.
Well, it's been his wheelhouse. So for decades.
So, and I like, you know, whether it's in business or whether it's in life, when I work with a consultant or work with a mentor, I want to work with the smartest guy in the room. Yeah. And Justin's incredibly intelligent. And everything that he said resonated with me as far, you know, I liked how he talked about the physics of weight gain and the math of it. You know, my brain, I have a degree in computer science, and my brain operates on math and you know, scientific background. So that just resonated with me, and I wanted to learn about the carb cycling and his approach to it, and you know, really get into that. So that's what motivated me to reach out to Justin.
How did it go the first year working with him? What was your increase or your gain?
First year for me was rough, man. I'm trying to think, was it 2020? COVID, we had COVID, and I had dieted down for a show, and my show got canceled 3 weeks out. So I was just sit there, and I was so upset because I dieted down, and I just ate like crap all summer. And then I connected with Justin towards the end of that summer. So I guess it's been 3 years I worked with him. And then we went through an off season together. I put on some weight, and then we dieted down. Justin said that I had one of the craziest metabolisms he's ever seen in a guy my age, and I lost too much weight. I got super skinny on my first prep. I think it was all the way down to like 185, 190 on stage.
From where?
Started off at 270.
Oh shit. Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
260.
Yeah.
260, but my metabolism just spun out of control. And so he actually has to, the way we've done the last prep, he actually is pushing my food up towards the end of the prep, going into the show. I was having unlimited high days this last prep, which he said he doesn't do that often.
Yeah.
But
Then was that the off season where you put on 85? So
Yeah,
it's
that
not
was
really 85 if it started. So where did you started at 270, went down. Where did you end up when you came back up?
I got back up to 270 again, but it was a different 270.
Different 270, yeah.
It was a very different 270. So in actual stage weight, I put on 52 pounds of stage weight in 1 year.
No shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I have some pictures up on Instagram somewhere, but
no, I saw those.
Yeah. I went from, I don't know, 187 or 185 on stage up to about 240.
And that was at 45?
47?
47.
Yeah. I had the best year of my best progress of my life at 47. So anybody who thinks that it's too late.
No, this is why I wanted to talk to you, is this.
Yeah, it was a pretty insane year. I mean, everything just went perfectly. And I think part of it was this is the first time in my life that I actually treated an off season like a prep.
Yes.
So I was super strict with my diet. There was no deviations. I can count the number of missed meals or cheat meals that I had in that year on one hand. So I was 99.9% solid with my diet in that off season. And as a coach, as working with somebody, when you have somebody that's compliant, it's so much easier on the coach to make adjustments.
Yeah.
And it's from a computer perspective, good data in, good data out. If you put crap data in, you get crap out. So, and I just hit everything. I think there was some sort of super compensation effect too after getting extremely depleted. So maybe me getting extremely depleted for the first show was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
That I caught that crazy rebound and came back as a super heavy.
How much rebound did you have in the first 3 weeks?
I think in 6 weeks I put on 50 pounds.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it was nuts. I remember my ankles were like looked like water balloons.
I've been there.
But I was getting insane. I mean, I remember my girlfriend and I going on vacation, and I was getting calf pumps just from walking.
Yeah.
It was nutty.
Was your training lower volume at that time?
No, I was doing the high volume training.
Okay. All right. So the rebound straight through into that. And what, during that time period, I guess I need to put the disclaimer out now, right? That we're not physicians, we're not doctors, we're not nurses, we don't work in the medical field in any fucking way whatsoever. Is that a good enough disclaimer? Right. And one of our sponsors is Marek Health, so you should get your blood work done.
This is not advice, medical advice.
Yeah, it's not medical advice. We're just going to talk about.
I'm just a stupid bodybuilder.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about stupid bodybuilding things, and you should get your blood work done, as I'm sure we'll talk about as we go through here, different blood markers and things like that you should watch. Was anything different with your PEDs when you came from that rebound from before?
Insulin.
Okay.
Insulin was in the mix, and that was something that I had done differently. I used a fair amount of insulin. And it was really just basic stuff, just testosterone, Primobolan, insulin, and growth hormone is pretty much what I ran. A little bit of Nandrolone, a little bit of MPP. It was nothing crazy. I mean, I have it all documented up on my YouTube channel. I went through and kept vlogs that I posted up of everything that I did. But I think I capped out at, and then off season, 750 tests, 700 Primobolan, and then I was running 6 units of GH a day. and then I was running insulin every day, Lantus, and then if you know anything about Justin's programs, he pushes the rapid insulin on the high carbohydrate days.
All right, so it was on the high days. It wasn't intra or post workout, or was it also there?
No, you're running it all day. So I mean, the high carbohydrate days are low fat, high carbs. So it makes more sense to have the insulin push the whole day versus just, I think a lot of guys are slamming it in around the workout window, but you don't just grow through the workout window. You're growing throughout the whole day. So I would think you would want the anabolic effect of it the whole day. But I think that combination of the insulin use, the high carbohydrate, lower fat diet, and the high volume training all just paired really well together. And it just synergized to just blow me up. I mean, and I've seen it with my clients. I've had some guys that I've taken and just repeated the same formula, and they just absolutely have blown up running that formula. And I think that, you know, you'll see it on the pro level. Like I speculate that that's what Milo Sarchev does with his guys. You know, you hear bits and pieces of what he talks about, but you look at a guy like Samson Dowda that went from, you know, just being, you know, bottom, you know, last call out into winning the Arnold in 1 year of working with Milos. So you tell me what changed.
Oh yeah. Now with I've been away from it for a while. So the Lantus, is that the long acting?
Yeah, Lantus is a basal insulin.
So it's like the morning one, right? And then
I take it at night actually,
Okay.
but it's a 24-hour insulin. And really the idea with the Lantus is you're taking pressure off your pancreas. So if you're pounding a bunch of food, this is another thing that I speculate with older guys, that they're just not making enough endogenous insulin to keep up with the food if you're pounding the food. So some insulin is probably necessary just to deal with the high carbohydrate intake if you want to put on size as you get older.
With that, were you using Humalog with the meals on the high days?
Yeah, I was
as well?
using Humalog on the high days as well. So if you think about it like Lantus, you know, if you take, I think I run 24 units of Lantus. It sounds like a lot, but it's, when you average it out over a 24-hour period, it comes out to about a unit per hour, which is really nothing. Your body has a background insulin that's present at all times, and that really is just replacing that background insulin that's present at all times, and it takes pressure off your pancreas for making that insulin. Gives the beta cells a break when you're eating a ton of food, and then you use the rapid insulin to deal with the meals. Essentially, that's how diabetics do it.
Yeah. When we should note that dosing is dependent upon a lot of things. So it's dependent on, because it's not like test. I mean, we're talking insulin here. Like a lot of people, it's how you metabolize it. It's the carbohydrates, the timing of the carbohydrates.
Yeah, and I tell people more insulin's not better.
No, fuck no.
There is an appropriate amount, and it's what I'll do is I measure my glucose levels.
Yes.
And then I'll adjust my doses accordingly with the insulin. But I mean, insulin is sort of a taboo subject. I mean, everybody's scared of it. But honestly, you'll see a lot of older bodybuilders that end up being type 2 diabetics. And I think that, you know, this is just my speculation. I think a lot of it has to do with burning out their beta cells in their pancreas from, it's this perfect storm of things. You take growth hormone, which blunts insulin sensitivity, and then your pancreas has to make more insulin to keep up with it. And then years and years of doing this combined with eating a shit ton of food, you end up having beta cell burnout where your pancreas can't keep up with the demand, and you have insulin resistance and your beta cell burnout and pancreatic insufficiency on top of it. So actually, I there is a belief amongst some in the community that running a basal insulin could be prophylactic and actually save your pancreas long term and save you from being a diabetic if you're pounding a ton of food and you're a bodybuilder. Now, you want to manage insulin sensitivity as well too with the growth hormone. So you sort of have all these factors that you need to keep in mind and that you need to be aware of as a bodybuilder. So you want to manage insulin sensitivity. You want to make sure that you have enough insulin to keep up with the carbohydrates that you're taking in. But it's sort of a catch-22 because the more insulin you use, the more likely you are to have insulin resistance. So
yeah.
So, but that's kind of the brilliance of the carb cycling diet.
Yes.
So you're only pushing hard. Typically with Justin, like with what we'll do, we'll push hard 2, maybe 3 days a week, where you're at a very large surplus and a large amount of carbs, and then you'll have your low days where you're probably in a slight deficit. and giving your gut a break, giving your pancreas a break, giving your body a break as far as resetting insulin sensitivity. And sometimes what I'll do is actually pull my GH on the low day, so I give my body a break, so to keep my insulin sensitivity in check. And then there's things like berberine. Justin has this suppressor product, for maintaining insulin sensitivity. But keeping track of all those things. But circling this all back around, I think that's what a big problem is with like older bodybuilders and why they can't gain weight. I'll see older bodybuilders that are throwing more and more and more anabolics at it, and I don't think that's the issue. I think it's nutrient uptake is the issue. I just don't think your body is utilizing the food that you're putting in efficiently, because there's probably some sort of pancreatic insufficiency or insulin resistance, or whatever you have it.
So with the with his suppressor, I believe it's called suppressor.
Yeah, suppressor.
Right? That's one that from in the strength world for, how do I make this sound, for the lifters that are eating halfway decent, which I'm trying to keep the glass half full, right? It's something that I put out to them because of what you're talking about, because their insulin's just fucking all over the place, and I don't think they understand that trying to keep some kind of balance regulation with that is important for recovery.
Yep. And it's a vicious cycle, because as insulin resistance rises, your body is making more insulin and putting more stress on the pancreas, and more insulin leads to more insulin resistance. So it's just this declining. You can see it in blood work too. Like I'll see a lot of times, like guys will go into their doctor and they say that the doctor says I'm fine, but then you'll see guys with high triglycerides. That's sort of like the canary in the coal mine. Once again, I'm just speculating, but I think what happens is that your blood sugars are starting to get out of control. Your body's way of managing and dealing with it is to spew out more lipids, just to convert that into triglycerides. So through the liver, if I remember properly. But I think that's what's going on. So that's sort of like a first line of defense I'll look at. So if I see an athlete come to me and they have high triglycerides, generally it's because their insulin sensitivity is probably starting to decline. Then the A1C starts to rise afterwards. Usually the A1C, I don't know if you're familiar with A1C, but it's I think it's a 90-day. Basically, the way they measure it, it's essentially a reflection of your glucose levels over a 90-day period of time. But that doesn't seem to get affected until later on. You may already have insulin resistance, and your A1C could be okay because your body is cranking out enough insulin to deal with it. Mm-hmm. But it's overproducing insulin at that point. But it's just a vicious cycle. And like with strength athletes or bodybuilders, anybody who's pounding a lot of food, and if you're taking a growth hormone on top of it, it's an issue you got to be aware of. And a lot of times guys aren't aware of it until the A1C is too high, and you're already in a screwed up situation then.
Well, I think a lot of guys aren't aware of it because they're not checking it. Yeah. So there's just blasting shit without.
Well, you just don't perform well. Yeah. Like you'll see a lot of guys get older, and they keep blasting more anabolics, and they're not getting any progress. And it's probably not the anabolics that are the issue. It's to me, it's insulin resistant. And it's the same thing too. Like you'll see, I don't know, everybody talked about the GH guts 15, 20 years ago. I don't think it was actually, to me, it's clear that wasn't organ growth, because, you look at some of these guys now that they're retired, their bellies have gone back down to normal size. So if it were organ growth, they would still have the big gut, but they don't. So my speculation is it's visceral fat accumulation, and that usually happens when you have insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. You get that big old bubble gut, your organs are inflamed. So I think that's from insulin resistance, and you'll see it now. Like a lot of guys are doing a better job of managing that. You don't see those big guts so much anymore in bodybuilding. They seem to have, for the most part, gone away.
In the bodybuilding world, it's different from the strength world that I'm from, but I kind of know it a little bit because years ago when I brought Justin on as an athlete that we had at the time, it's one of the conversations that I had with him was bodybuilding has always been intriguing to me for a lot of different reasons, but the one thing that was the most intriguing to me was how somebody could get to the national level, then turn pro, then after they turn pro, put on, not everybody, so this is not a broad statement across the board, but some could put on like 20, 30 pounds of lean body mass within the first 2 years. And that was so fucking confusing to me, because it's, in my brain, it was like, it's not the drugs, right? Because they're taking drugs to fucking turn pro.
Right.
Like, what the fuck? They're probably taking less drugs after they, like, what the fuck is this? And that was the question that I had to him, you know, because it's, no other sport do you really see that happen. Like, you don't turn, you know, fucking pro in the NFL, then all of a sudden you become fucking 20 times better, you know, or tenfold, threefold, whatever it is, over a period of time. But not like, I mean, think about that. You know, it's actually kind of fucking ridiculous if you think about it.
Yeah, the guys that I see blasting the most usually are the guys that are trying to get the pro card.
Yes. So I knew it wasn't that. We all know that, man. I mean, the guys that are blasting the most suck. Everybody knows that. Sometimes it may be because they're blasting too much shit.
Yeah.
And so his answer to me was, I can should. In some way and form, the conversation moved into, I can show you. You know, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And as I discovered real quick, you know, with the car, to me, it was so fucking intriguing, right? Because you're trying to balance the training with the carb cycling, then the carb cycling with the recovery of the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because obviously you're not going to do a fucking leg day after 2 fucking low days, right? You got to figure out where the hell those are going to go. So I'm trying to figure that shit out. And then the PEDs vastly changed, you know, from fucking test and primo and, you know, whatever I would take as a power lifter to, you know, growth, insulin, all these other things I've never used before in my entire fucking life, you know, thyroid, and synergistically how they all were working together was like blowing my fucking mind, as you were kind of talking there, you know, the growth hormone, the insulin sensitivity, it's like, oh my God, it's just this fucking spiral loop. But then you gotta have to time the carbs with all this kind of shit, or the insulin. It was very fucking intriguing to me. But then when I got leaner and got to the super high days, you know, because my metabolism was ripping like crazy, the same sort of thing. It was, I wasn't going to step on stage, so a lot of my carbs were cereal, you know, low fat.
I was
cereal.
eating Captain Crunch 2 days before I got on stage.
My mouth was bleeding. At the top of my mouth was bleeding from so much of that shit. And insulin every high carb, and it was just it's everybody's almost the same. None of it used outside of just that day. And that day, I wonder what your take is here. I looked forward to it until it started, and then like 4 meals in, it's like I fucking hated it, right? Because now it's like you feel like your eyes are swollen shut, you know, and then you still got 6 more fucking meals, you know, to go. It was like 100 gram carb meals, 10, like every 2 hours. And the fucking 2 hours go by fast, man. It's like you want to have more time.
Well, Justin's brilliant. He puts the cheat meal at the end of the high day. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I get to the end of the high day, and half the time I don't even want the damn cheat meal.
Exactly.
I'm so full. I'm like, I just don't even want to eat it.
Now, what did your how much swing did you have in your physical appearance from that day or that next morning compared to after 2 low days?
I mean, I fill out. I just soak carbs up for whatever reason. I think that there's some people, like I notice in bodybuilding, there's some people that seem to be more, they have more, I don't know physiologically what the difference is. There's some guys that have more contractile tissue and other guys that seem to have more sarcoplasmic growth where they just fill up. And I tend to be that guy that just fills up.
That's how I was. It's like I looked fucking amazing for a day.
Yeah.
And then after the 2 low days, I don't even want to look at myself. It's like I'm fucking emancipated. I'm like fucking anorexic.
Well, what do they say in bodybuilding? You got to get flat to lose fat.
Yeah, I know. It's like, fuck, you know, this sucks, you know? And, but when I stopped doing that, I mean, the process was so fucking intriguing, and, you know, his brilliance as well as, you know, kind of manipulating all that process. And, And thank God you don't need all that shit in the strength world. But so it's a
I mean, it could
thing.
help.
It could. That's an interesting discussion. So what I've seen is unless they can control the diet, right? What typically happens is they'll use the insulin, just get fat, and end up competing in a weight class heavier at the same strength, which is one issue, because I think all they're doing is the insulin post training, and then with chocolate milk or some stupid shit like that, and then that's it. Where I don't believe it's shuttling the glycogen like they would think it is. It's just making them fatter.
Well, the big mistake that I see guys make with insulin is they're pairing it with a lot of fats.
Yes.
So if you're eating a lot of fats with the insulin, you're just going to get fat. So, I mean, if you think about it, insulin just signals the cell to uptake nutrients. It's indiscriminate in how it signals the uptake. So you're going to be soaking up carbohydrates. You're going to be soaking up amino acids. You're going to be soaking up any fats that you eat. So ideally, if you're going to be taking insulin, you would probably want to keep it in a low-fat environment. That's why you run it on the high days, because the high days are as close to zero fats as you possibly can get it. So a lot of dudes, like the dudes that I see that say that insulin made me fat, are the ones that are drinking chocolate milk and drinking cheese or eating cheeseburgers afterwards. You are just going to get fat if you do that.
Well, the other thing that, and I don't know because those compounds don't come into my world that frequently, is how much benefits there going to be from that if there's not growth with it.
Yeah, I mean, paired with the growth hormone that is very important with it as well. I mean, you're going to increase IGF-1.
Yeah.
Growth hormone does seem to blunt insulin sensitivity in the fat cells, so it seems, at least from a surface level, I could be wrong about this, but at least from what I understand, that growth hormone is going to prevent fat storage as well. So if you're blunting insulin sensitivity in the fat cell, you're pushing those carbohydrates into the muscle, you're going to have a better outcome as far as body composition goes.
Would you say that if, there's obviously the anabolics, if you have the anabolics, the growth hormone, and then the insulin, that those together is going to create more of a synergistic environment than bigger doses of just anabolics or bigger doses?
Yeah, I mean, they're all different growth pathways.
Yes.
Right? And there's this mentality in the bodybuilding and powerlifting world is just to completely bludgeon the androgen receptor, which is what you're doing when you're taking anabolics. And there's other growth pathways, IGF-1, insulin, nutrient uptake. People don't even consider that as far as a growth pathway. Even digestion. If you're not digesting your food properly, it doesn't matter what you eat.
Yeah.
So estrogen is anabolic as well, so there's more than one pathway. So if you want to be, you could make the argument that if you're using growth hormone and insulin, that you could lower the anabolic load and have a better result.
I've seen that, across the board with people.
I use less. I used less the year that I had the big growth than I did the year before.
Yeah, and it's different. Again, it's a different world, but it's the strength athletes aren't looking for the same amount of the same amount of hypertrophy and all that. So the doses are going to be, maybe they're not different. I'm making a lot of assumptions here. The doses could be different, but but when they're all there in some capacity, they don't need the 5 fucking grams of anabolics, that many use, which that's a lot of fucking shit. I think that's a lot of fucking shit.
Yeah, I don't. I got up to, I don't know, 280 running 1.5 grams. So using less and running. Another thing too, like if we talked about it earlier, if your insulin sensitivity is blown out, that's also a problem too. It doesn't matter what you take. So there's other things. There's multiple pathways you can manage, managing insulin sensitivity too through something like berberine or metformin. That's another way too to make sure that you're maximizing your nutrient uptake as well. You're going to get growth that way as well too. So I've seen it in blood work too, where guys actually lower anabolic load and use growth hormone and insulin, and blood panels are actually better.
No, that's what I've seen. You know, it's very frequently. I mean, it's a, for some people it's hard to grasp,
Yep.
right? Because a lot of the people that I will be speaking with, they're not going to compete in either at this point. You know, they're just fucking washed up meatheads, right? So, but to me, their dose of anabolics being over a gram is too fucking, but they can just get it half of that and then synergistically tie it in with, you know, other compounds. And when they do that, they start making better progress.
Yep.
But in their head, they think they need 1,500 to, 2 grams. You just keep pushing this stuff. And, first thing that goes in my head with shit like that is how much of this is fucking actually what you think it is. You know, how much of it's real to begin with. And then how much toxicity is associated with the shit that's not real. So that's a whole different conversation. But then are the side effects worse at 2 or 3 grams compared to the lower dose with other compounds? I don't know the answer there.
Well, I mean, not all the compounds are created equal, too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like to use the analogy, and this is a ridiculous analogy, but I think it's one that people can understand. It's like drinking. There's a big difference between tequila and a glass of wine.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between Tren and Primobolan. Mm-hmm. So one for one, if you're taking a gram of Tren, that's going to be a lot more harsh on your body than taking a gram of Primobolan. Mm-hmm. And for bodybuilding purposes, if you think in the off season, really our primary objective is hypertrophy. And there's only so much muscle protein synthesis that you can generate in a given period of time. And when you look at the studies, really all anabolics have similar rates of muscle protein synthesis milligram for milligram. But people don't understand that. Now, there are secondary attributes that we could leverage for other things, like for example, in powerlifting, anadrol is going to have an effect on strength because of CNS drive that you're not going to get from other compounds. It's the king of strength. But as far as for muscle protein synthesis, none of them are really that much superior to the other. So why not run the safer stuff?
Yeah.
And really it seems to be the dose is more important than the actual compound choice. So if you ran Primobolan and testosterone, you're probably going to get a better result without the skewed blood work. And as you mentioned before, if you're toxic, if you're sick, you're not going to progress. We've all pushed stuff to the point where we've felt sick.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you 4 weeks of running anadrol, you feel like you're going to die. Mm-hmm. But if you're healthier, you have a better effect. And it's the same thing with if we're leveraging other pathways, you don't need as much as far as the anabolics go. You can use actually less and get away with less and get a similar result. So if you're managing insulin sensitivity, making sure your insulin sensitivity is high, managing nutrient uptake with something like with insulin, making sure that you have your testosterone base in place and that you have a proper amount of estrogen conversion. Everybody thinks estrogen's the enemy. It's not. And then placing an anabolic on there that's a low side effect anabolic, something like Primobolan or Masteron. And then, growth hormone on top of it, you're leveraging multiple growth pathways and probably having less of an effect on your health.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference between Primobolan and Masteron? Isn't it essentially the same thing?
They're essentially the same thing. If you look at, I think there's one carbon molecule difference. Don't slaughter me, Internet, if I'm off on this, but from what I recall, I believe there's one carbon molecule difference between Primobolan and Masteron. Primobolan is a bit more anabolic, but as we talked about before, they all have similar rates of muscle protein synthesis. I have found Primobolan to be better for hypertrophy and Masteron to be better for strength, just anecdotally.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
That's what I have found.
What else have you found in relationship to different testosterone esters?
Testosterone is testosterone is testosterone. Mm-hmm. Just pick an ester and stick with it. I don't know why people get so obsessed. Now there are times that the ester will matter. So for example, if you want to get in quick and get out quick with something like Trenbolone, if we're running Trenbolone on contest prep, you do not want to run a long ester. Everybody gets obsessed with something like Parabolan, which is Hex, I believe, which is, it's going to take 2 months, a month and a half, whatever, to clear your system. So if you run into side effects, you're screwed. Whereas, acetate's in and out in a few days. So that's something we went in and we went out fast. Nandrolone, I prefer to use MPP because sometimes people run into problems with Nandrolone causing anxiety or impotence or things like that. So if you want to get in and get out fast, I prefer that over Deca. I think, so you can, titrate and adjust quickly.
Okay.
But testosterone, most people are going to be running testosterone year round.
Your base. Yeah,
as a base. So unless there's a compelling reason to come off of it quickly, just run whatever and just pick one and just run it year round.
Yeah. With your own personal blood markers, what are the things that you look for?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the stuff I see skewed. I look at hundreds of blood panels with clients, and the stuff everybody has off. Everybody has some level of erythrocytosis where their red blood cell count, hemoglobin, hematocrit are all going to be elevated. That tends to be just cost of doing business when taking PEDs. Now, there are things you can do to mitigate it. Telmisartan seems to help to a certain degree. Compound choices, definitely things like Anadrol are going to make it higher. EQ is going to make it higher. Donating blood, can help lower it, but it's only a temporary relief. But
with that, have you seen people super compensate from that? So say the level's here, then they donate blood, then it ends up
Yeah, I've
higher.
heard that can be a problem, and I have not seen that in the blood work. I've heard people say that your body actually rebounds.
I think obviously all of this is going to be dependent upon the individual, and all of this should be done through physician or company.
Yeah,
like
I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying the stuff that I see skewed. That would be one. Everybody has some sort of lipid skewing that runs PEDs that I've seen. Pretty much everyone that runs PEDs has lowered HDL. Now, HDL seems to be largely dependent upon how estrogen plays a role in HDL. So if you crush your estrogen, HDL is going to be lower, is what I've seen. And HDL also seems to be strongly affected by oral anabolics. So because how they're processed through the liver, oral anabolics seem to suppress HDL further. So that's an issue. That's why I generally would stay away from orals unless you're on contest prep or peaking for a powerlifting meet or something like that.
All right, if they're elevated, then how are they? A lot of these questions I'm asking to kind of compare to see how like Marek would mitigate it compared to what's being mitigated on the street. So how would people mitigate the lipids?
Well, LDL is largely diet in my opinion. LDL is largely diet. HDL is from the anabolics and usually a function of your estrogen production. So for the LDL, you could use a statin or something like ezetimibe. I see a lot of people running ezetimibe now, which basically is just a way of correcting your shitty diet.
That's what I was going to say. I see that more as a prophylactic with a lot of people anymore.
I mean, I run ezetimibe. My doctor has me on the ezetimibe. It works pretty well. It from what I understand, it actually blocks the absorption of LDL through the digestive tract. I'm not entirely sure of the mechanisms, but it doesn't work through the through the liver like a statin does.
Yeah.
Statins seem to cause problems with guys that lift weights. Guys makes them weaker. Guys end up having muscle cramps. I've heard of issues in that area. So joint issues. So statins generally are not a good choice if you're a bodybuilder or strength athlete. Over the counter stuff, there's citrus bergamot. It seems to have an effect. Niacin has an effect. Fish oil seems to help HDL, but it also raises LDL, it seems. I don't know. I mean, the LDL numbers, they keep changing them.
I know.
So it used to be, if I recall correctly, like in the early 2000s, it used to be 150. Now it's below 100.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best pieces of advice that I was given. If you're not blasting, a lot of shit, so say in your off season, your diet is relatively clean, more clean than not.
Yep.
then what are your panels then? Like, basically, what is your baseline that's not being skewed by compounds? Now, how far out of that baseline does shit get?
Yeah.
You know, if you're starting to blast things, that way you have that base, and, you know, having somebody that knows what the fuck they're looking at helps. You know, doctor helps, Marek Health, you know, people that know this help. Because sometimes I think, not a physician again, that people start trying to mitigate shit that might just genetically already be fucking skewed because of who they are, and is still there when none of that stuff's there.
Yeah, my LDL is always high. It's been high since I was 18, and I'll go in and get a cardiac CT scan done, and I have 0 plaque.
Yeah.
You know, so just because you have high LDL doesn't mean that you're going to have plaque buildup, but it is an increased risk factor.
Most definitely, yes.
So, I mean, it's, you know, there's a whole process that your body has to go through to lay down plaque. I mean, it's usually the biggest thing you can do to mitigate a lot of this stuff is just manage your blood pressure.
Yes.
You know, if you have elevated blood pressure, then, you know, that's going to put stress on the arterial walls, and then you're going to have, you know, cracks, and then scarring, and then plaque buildup as a result of that. So it's not necessarily the LDL is present. High LDL is present in people that have plaque buildup, but it's not present. You know, it can be. It goes both ways. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have. So it's important to get your. I would say usually I tell my guys to get a cardiac CT scan done every so often. Probably get an echocardiogram done every so often to make sure they don't have any LVH or their ejection fraction is normal. That's a huge problem with a lot of guys. But a lot of this goes back to high blood pressure.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think blood pressure, in my non-medical opinion, is the biggest risk factor, and also the most dangerous risk factor, because, fuck it, I mean, during most of the time I was competing, I wore that like as a badge of honor. Yeah. Like, I'm purple, I'm ready. Like, how fucking dumb was that? You know what I'm saying?
What was there when Eddie Hall set the world record on the deadlift? Wasn't he like bleeding from his eyeballs or something?
And like, your nosebleeds and shit like that. Like, this is fucking awesome, man. I'm ready. You know.
I think he was bleeding out his ear or whatever. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, it's so fucking stupid when you think back on it. And in fairness, I guess, you know, meds have changed too. So the ability to mitigate it is a little bit better, because blood pressure meds 30 years ago just fucking knocked you out, made you tired and weak as fuck.
Yeah, everybody's going to ARBs now. Telmisartan is popular, you know, because androgens stimulate the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, and you have an increased aldosterone production, and then more water retention, which leads to hypertension. And telmisartan seems to address that. It also seems to have some renal and cardioprotective qualities too, as well. It seems to, at least in studies, have shown that it prevents cardiac remodeling, so you don't get the LVH, and it also seems to be protective of the nephron and the kidneys as well. So those, I mean, really, when you look at guys that have abused PEDs or have done strength or bodybuilding over a period of time, usually the health issues that get people are cardiovascular events and kidneys. It's heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure. Those are, and really all three of those, for the most part, go back to high blood pressure.
Yes.
There are some compounds that are directly kidney toxic, you know. So, for example, I mean, there does seem to be some evidence that equipoise might be renal toxic. I speculate that that Trenbolone is. I've seen. I mean, anybody who's ever taken Tren, you know what you get, the golden pea from it. That can't be good for your kidneys. No. You get the foamy gold pea, and I've seen guys with crappy EGFR after running high doses of Tren. So I don't know if it's a transient or permanent thing, but managing blood pressure is probably the single easiest thing you can do to prevent most of this stuff.
Yeah. What are the other markers that you'll look at? Because we talked about the lipids, the hemoglobin.
Triglycerides are one for you know, to me, like I said before, that's the canary in the coal mine for insulin resistance. A1C, I have guys get A1C tests done to make sure that we're not in full blown, you know, headed towards diabetes. That's another one.
AST.
ALT and AST. those are elevated on everybody that lifts weights, regardless of whether or not they they're on PEDs. And it's because when you can go do a heavy leg training day and go in and get your blood work done, and your ALT and AST are going to be elevated the next day. It's not that you have any liver damage; it's just your muscles are releasing the same enzymes when they're under damage. So. GGT is a better indicator of liver health, at least in my opinion, for bodybuilders. Keeping track of your kidney health, but EGFR, the traditional method of calculating EGFR, is probably not the best way to do it, because pretty much everybody that lifts has elevated bond from eating a lot of protein and elevated creatinine from just muscle damage and from taking freaking creatine.
Yeah.
So a cystatin C test is probably a better indicator of that. And then if you have issues, you can go see a nephrologist and actually have kidney scans done and whatnot. But really, we want to look at the stuff that's going to, circling back around. We want to keep an eye on our kidneys. We want to keep an eye on our heart. I'm not saying you should ignore your liver, but you can beat the crap out of liver and
kidneys are not, so
once the kidneys are done, once the kidneys done, it's done. The liver, you can pretty much it's pretty, unless you have some sort of sclerotic damage to the liver, it's you can beat the liver up pretty bad and it'll recover.
With the before we started talking, we were talking about some of the products through First Attachment, and we're talking about liver and the kidneys. So there's the QRF, which, aside from what we're talking about here, what I was telling you is what I liked about it is because it's NAC, and I always fuck this up. Tudka. I always want to say Tuca, but Tudka, and the milk thistle. It's a benefit to me because it's all in one fucking bottle, and it's like have a full cabinet full of NAC, which is probably a good thing. Anyhow, people should stock up on anything that has NAC.
Yeah, because it might not be around for much longer.
So it might not be around. And then what was the flak jacket, C, zinc, and D, puts it all into one again.
I haven't tried the flak jacket. I run the renal reset and the I think it's renal, or is it renal?
I think it's renal reset.
Yeah, renal reset, and then the QRF. The QRF, I've had some people. It actually works. I've seen some people that come to me with crazy high liver enzymes, and I'll have them run the QRF for a month, and they come back down to normal. It's pretty wild.
Really?
It's the NAC.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
It's what it is.
I think so.
If you just wanted to take the NAC, Tucka helps some, but
yeah, the NAC is a big one. It's like I was telling you, I have his stuff, but I have a boatload of that shit. Because
I know I bought like a case of it when the FDA was talking about pulling it off the market.
Yeah, well, it was about a year ago, right? Or was it actually a little more than that?
Maybe a little more than that.
But I mean, it was like every now and again, there's like, Kratom's going to get taken off the market or whatever. So I'll buy a bunch of that, even though I've never taken it, right? So you never know. And then the NAC, I'm like, this is fucked up. Like, why this one? And anything that can potentially become a pharmaceutical agent, they'll pull. Armor thyroid being a kind of an example of that, pig thyroid, or whatever.
Metformin would be one. Metformin's just a plant.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I forget there's
yeah,
flower.
You're right. Yeah.
I think metformin came from a flower. I can't remember correctly, but that is, somebody will correct me in the comment section. But yeah, metformin was just from a plant. And NAC, if I recall correctly, we were talking about it before, but I believe it's what they use in ER. We're pulling people out of acute liver failure. Like people come in, somebody's had a bad night of drinking, took too many Tylenol, and they come in the ER with a liver failure. It's NAC. I believe they use to pull people out of liver failure.
Damn. Let's take a break real quick. Then when we come back, you had a video you just put up on your YouTube that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Got pissed. I want to let you guys know that we just had a limited edition drop on the website last week of new items that sweatshirt, flannel, t-shirts, shorts, Basically, the limited edition items are the items that directly support the Table Talk podcast. So if you go to elitefts.com/limited edition, or actually just the link in the description, you can find the limited edition items that we have now, which there's the one that I like the best is the shit suck good great, which is all emojis. The designs I always like the best, right? They're the ones that don't sell for shit, but they're the ones that I want to wear that I like the best. And there's the cigar one as well. And they're all there on the screen for you guys to be able to see. So if you go to elitefts.com/limited edition, the other thing that directly helps support the podcast that I haven't talked that much about is the Table Talk crew. The Table Talk crew is extra edition episodes that go out once a month. The content of those episodes are AMA related, question related, that come from the Table Talk Discord group, which is also part of being in the crew. When you're in the crew, there's dozens of ebooks that are in there. There's every seminar that we've ever done is put on there. There's courses that are put on there. There's series that have put on there. The original YouTube channel that we had for many years, before we migrated to the newer one, all that old content is on there. There's discussion groups for just general training, fitness, life, nutrition, basically everything that you can think of is on. So just go look at what that is, or better than that, just go to the description, click on join the crew. That helps directly support the podcast, which is how we're able to keep this thing rolling. Today's episode is brought to you by First Detachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Detachment. 1D's real world experience is what I would consider, and they consider, battle tested. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. If you guys have followed me and have followed the podcast, you pretty much already know how I feel about the supplement industry. For me to get behind any brand, I have to trust the brand and I have to trust the person both. And I'm pretty sure you guys all know why. When it comes to creating formulas and putting products on the market, and there's nobody that I trust more than Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. In other words, no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and no BS. With the Element, I love the watermelon. The watermelon tastes freaking awesome. I drank 1 pack every day, no matter what. People that train out here, it's sitting out here for them all the time. The boxes don't last very long. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packages free with any Element order. Get yours at drinkelement.com/tabletalk. The deal is only available through the link in the description. The other thing is, if you don't like it, you can just give it away to a salty friend and Element will give you a 100% refund. No risk, money back guarantee. Head over to drinkelement.com/tabletalk. Marek Health is a premium telehealth platform specializing in hormone optimization and preventative medicine. Are you looking to optimize your health in and out of the gym, improve recovery, sex drive, and quality of life? Have you tried speaking to your health professional about this and have gotten the cold shoulder, stereotyped, or just told it's part of getting older? You just go to marekhealth.com/tabletalk and you can create your own lab, or you can take labs that we've had set up for them, which are based upon the same labs that I've been doing over the last 15 years. Or you can use their guided optimization. With this, they'll put you in touch with a patient care coordinator, which is actually pretty cool because you get to sit down and speak to somebody that can understand what you're looking for from hormone optimization and the preventative medicine standpoint. After that conversation, they'll determine which labs that you should and which tests you should have done, and then from there get the labs done. They'll review those labs with you and put you in touch with one of their hormone optimization specialists that can determine which supplementation that you should use over the counter or prescription. MarekHealth.com/Table Talk. The discount code is Table Talk. Okay, we're back. So, whap. The video I want to talk about is you just made a video comparing the bodybuilders to powerlifters in regards to dropping over dead.
Yep.
So it was kind of frank, straight up there. It's on your YouTube, which is what was first?
Anabolic Bodybuilding.
Anabolic Bodybuilding on YouTube. Just search that. Boom, it comes up. Or actually, better than that, the link's in the bio, right?
There we go.
So there we go. That makes it easier. So you'll be able to see it there. So just recap what you talked about, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, so you think about it, you would think that powerlifters would have poor health outcomes, but so let's be honest, powerlifters aren't the best with their diets.
No.
And really, I mean, you would, or they probably don't do cardio. Not many of them. Maybe some are. It seems like the modern powerlifters seem to be more conscious of the diet and cardio and stuff like that. I see, like, you had Dan up.
Yeah, it's better.
He's a lean guy. He's strong. But thinking about it, they run the same gear for the most part, and they're eating crappy diets, and they don't do cardio. So you would think they would have poorer health outcomes, but they don't. You don't hear of powerlifters falling over dead like bodybuilders are. And I really think it's the rigors of contest prep and the extreme crap that happens at the end of contest prep that is what's getting bodybuilders. And it may not be at that time, it may be down the road that it gets them, but if you think about it, you get to the end of contest. Anybody that's done contest prep knows how miserable it is getting on stage. But you get to the end of contest prep. We already established that most people that take PEDs are going to have thicker blood. Their hematocrit's going to be higher, red blood cells. Hemoglobin, probably increased clotting factors in a lot of these guys. And there's other things that cause increased clotting. And then you throw in dehydration on top of it, and diuretics, which are going to further dehydrate people, electrolyte imbalances at the end of contest prep, and the extreme stuff that you do to get on stage. And that is a recipe for me for damaging kidneys, for having heart attack or stroke. I mean, you look at the guys, what was it? It was George Peterson passed away. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was. And you look at his autopsy, he really didn't have much of anything in his system. I think it was just, if I remember right, it was just EQ and some maybe some Winstrol. I could be wrong about that, but in his health markers were otherwise okay. When you looked at his autopsy, it wasn't. So they put down the cause of death. It was an acute hypertensive event from what I recall. So basically, he had a situation where my guess is he probably was dehydrated, probably the blood was thick, and then you just throw an arrhythmia or have a clot or have a heart attack and die. And it may not, some of the stuff may not be evident at the time of the contest. So for example, if you damage your kidneys, you may not know that for 10, 15, 20 years down the road from being dehydrated. A lot of kidneys, I get guys that come to me and they don't even know that their kidneys are failing. They'll be in kidney failure and have no idea that they're in kidney failure, and you'll see it on the blood work. So it's one of those things that I just I think it's the rigors of contest prep that get people, and powerlifters are not putting themselves through that. I mean, some guys are cutting weight to make a weight class or whatever, but it's not the same level. Same level of stuff.
And maybe with some it is because it's extreme.
Yeah.
If they're cutting 25 pounds or something like that, and they're doing it fast. One day, I don't know, because maybe that fast is relatively safer but it's still stripping down.
Yeah, and they're also not at like a super lean body fat where they're already in a compromised state. You're essentially in a starved state.
Yes.
At that point. I mean, even fighters, you'll see fighters cut weight and stuff all the time, and they're not falling over dead.
Well, the reason why that was an interesting video is because it's an interesting topic to look at, but a lot of times the way that it's looked at is in snapshots of time, right? So if we're looking at the competitive powerlifter or competitive bodybuilder in this 10-year window that they're competitive, right? So what's the risk? What's the damage? What's the comparison of that decade of time? And then 10 years after, so we start moving further away. The issue is there's no studies on this, right? So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
But we start to move further away, then they also become invisible, not relative. You don't know who they are, what they're doing. I mean, the only way you would really know what health issues they were having is if they were like a good friend of yours or somebody that trained at the same gym. So on the surface level, I could kind of agree with what you're saying on the surface level for sure. But if we were to look at how many of them in their 60s to 70s, or from 65 to 75, what percentage dropped dead compared to the bodybuilding population, then I can look and say most bodybuilders downsize, afterwards and kind of keep a relatively healthy lifestyle, where I don't know if that's the same on the flip, right? So then
that's a fair point.
In the 65 to 70, we don't know. I would love to know. Like if there was a way to know, that would be really cool, because then you could say, here's we can always say, here's the potential long-term, damage of all that. But in a way, it could look like from the surface level, this way's safer than this way, but this way may actually kill you 15 years sooner than this way if you happen to survive the decade.
I mean, we're all doing stupid stuff, so we
I know.
we know that there is some consequence to some of the stuff. I mean, you could mitigate some of it. We talked about it earlier, how you mitigate some of it, but you just acutely, you don't see powerlifters falling over young like you do bodybuilders. No,
not to the same degree. I mean, we can flip it and say, you don't see bodybuilders with a joint muscle damage that you see, the powerlifters as well, but I mean, that's still better than dead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I take that over being dead, but I mean, anybody who's an athlete, I mean, NFL players aren't, are limping around. I live literally right next to where the former Washington Redskins, Washington Commanders, their practice facility is. So a lot of their players actually retired players work out at my gym. So it's neat to see these guys, I mean, well, some of it's sad, you see guys that are in their 50s and barely walk. So there's definitely, all sports take their toll on you. But the older bodybuilders do seem to hold up pretty well. You look at a guy, Dorian's in his 60s. And I don't think Dorian was shy with what he was doing. No. And, I mean, he seems to be in relatively good health. Arnold's got to be, mid-late 70s, right? I know he's had some open heart surgery, but I think that was just a genetic thing. I believe that his father had the same thing, from what I recall.
I think it was a long time ago. He had the first one done.
Yeah, he had it redone recently. His heart valve, I think, what it was. But overall, he seems to be in good health. So, Frank Zane, a lot of these guys, Lou Ferrigno, all these guys seem to be in relatively good health. I think if you make it past, of course, those guys weren't doing the crazy stuff. Though, they were probably stepping on stage at 8-9% body fat. They weren't using diuretics. They weren't doing all the crazy peaking protocols that bodybuilders are doing now. So I don't know.
Man, I had a fucking question. I just lost it. Bam, went away. It was somewhere along the lines of the bodybuilders and the powerlifters and going through their
I mean, it's interesting to look at. I mean, I don't, with the cardiovascular thing, I mean, men cardiovascular events are probably the number one thing that kill men anyway. This is something I've often wondered about, is the PED use that goes on in bodybuilding and powerlifting worse for you than drinking beer and smoking cigarettes? Probably not.
We're going to have a biased opinion, right? But I'm going to agree and say probably not, right? And for several reasons, too, because you're not driving impaired.
Yeah.
Right? So, forget the actual toxicity of the compound that you're using, a lot of people are dying of, drunk driving, shit like that. So,
well, the WHO just they had a thing came out recently that alcohol is the #1 killer of men under 50 worldwide.
Really?
Alcohol-related deaths, side effects and stuff now. So it's that people don't consider that.
yeah.
But and I sound like I'm justifying what we do, but
Of course we are. But anyhow, I mean,
if I'm going to waste my health on something, I'd rather waste.
well,
it.
the alcoholics are going to justify it as well. They're
Yeah.
going to say, well, what I'm doing is definitely better than fucking taking Tren all the time, right? The question I was going to ask was with mitigation, and I think when Skip was out and, other people in the bodybuilding field that I've had out, I throw this one out there, is now that there's two factors to this. Now that the medications that are out there make it easier to mitigate the side effects. Do you see doses going up because of that? Because I would have pulled back.
Guys are going to push harder.
Okay, because that's where I was going. Is I always would pull back because I just felt horrible. And if you take so much that you feel horrible, then you're not going to recover. You're not going to make progress. So I'd pull back. Now, if I had something that made me not feel horrible, like blood pressure wise, I know what I would have done.
Oh yeah, guys are going to push harder.
So can that lead to some of the issues that you're talking about?
I mean, it's what is the axiom in toxicology? The dose is. The toxicity is in the dose, so the more you take, the higher the toxicity is going to be. But I mean, when you look at it, if you pull back and look at it, there is a curve. I go back to alcohol again as an analogy. It's like guys getting this mentality that they think more is better. There is an optimal dosing, and then when you get beyond that, you just get sicker. I mean, it's a curve. It's you think about it like with drinking. Once you're drunk, you're drunk. If you keep drinking more, if 8 beers get you drunk and you drink 20, you're not any drunker off of 20 than you are at 8. You're just getting sicker.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, I know it's a ridiculous analogy, but it's the same thing with PEDs. If you I hear guys taking crazy doses. Like I get guys coming, like, dude, you're smaller than me. What are you doing? So clearly it's not working. And we know once again, there is a limiting rate of how much a person can grow in a year. There's only so much muscle protein synthesis you can generate in a year, no matter how much you take.
Yeah. I think another factor plays into that, just being around this shit as long as I have, is there's always been younger people going on stuff. So I'm not going to say that teenagers weren't going on 40 years ago. I'm not going to say that, but they're going on. There's definitely more now than there was then. So where I'm going here is when you first started training 16 in that first range, there's probably a big chunk of time in there, I'm assuming, that you weren't taking anything.
No, I didn't take it.
Okay, so you're not taking anything. But while you're not taking anything, you're also learning the importance of how much to eat. Maybe not the right shit, but eating more makes a difference.
Yep.
The importance of recovery, the importance of sleep, the importance of training hard, the importance of training too hard. All these things you're kind of figuring out. For a strength athlete, they'd see their bench goes really, newbie gains, then it stops.
Yep.
Then they got to figure out, okay, fuck, I got to get it stronger. So they work their technique, or they find different ways, assistant exercises, or what programs, whatever, to be able to come through there. When the first answer to that first sticking point is test, then they're reducing all the other options in the future. So then the only option that they know
is more
shit. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where I think is a community as a whole, a strength community, we have to do a better job of trying to, it's great that we have all this education that's out there talking about cycles and all that stuff, but we need to do a better job to try to tell these fucking kids exactly what I just said. You're limiting your end potential substantially.
Yeah, I see these phases of rapid growth, and I think you have to master certain things before you get to that point. So like you said, the first phase of rapid growth or rapid progress is the newbie gains. You can literally go in the gym and do anything.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to grow and get stronger. And then you hit a wall where that stops working. And then the next part where I see where people make another bit of rapid progress is when they figure out how to eat. that's something I enjoy when I work with young guys, is teaching them how to eat. And then it's like the light switch clicks on and they see this additional burst of rapid progress from learning how to eat. The first time you take a cycle, you're going to have another burst of rapid progress. And then the other one, the last one, this is the fourth one that I see, is after you do a show and you catch that first rebound, is where I see guys have rapid bit of progress. But then after that, it's just the grind. But so I feel like very first thing, you got to learn how to lift.
Yeah.
You got to master the exercises, learn how to lift, and then you have to figure out how to eat first. And I don't think if you have those two buttoned up, you're not really going to get much out of the ladder, really.
Yeah. Well, they will, obviously. I mean, they'll get that first kick that you talked about.
But you'll see the guys that don't figure out how to eat and figure out how to train,
Yes.
they don't progress anymore. They get that first bit of gains from taking their first cycle, and they never make progress after that, ever. They're just stuck there. They gain that 10, 15 pounds or whatever it is that they gain from that first cycle, and that's it. That's where they're at for the rest of their life.
That's true.
Doesn't matter how much they take.
Yeah.
I see it over and over again. I literally will see it over and over again with guys that come to me. I'm stuck. I can't figure out why I'm not making progress. And then I clean up their diet and I get them training right. And then boom, they start making progress again.
Yeah, I can totally see that, especially with the access, the way everything is, and they're all jumping on trend anyhow. So it's fucked up what they're doing in the first place, and that from there, and as we're talking about that. See, that group, I mean, it gets foggy in my head, right? Because there's beginners and then there's the training age.
Yep.
So that a lot of these things.
On the engine.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this shit gets really hard to talk about because you can get somebody that's 25 or 30 that has never really done anything.
Yeah.
Not really trained that much, and that's different than the person that would be 16 or 17, even with what we're talking about here.
Yep.
At the higher age, they may have testosterone issues.
Yep.
Serious testosterone issues that would have to be addressed, which they're kind of a beginner, but they're an old beginner.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's time in the gym, really.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's miles on the motor. So if you can be a newbie at 40 if you've never lifted before.
Yeah.
But I think the same rule. If that guy has a deficiency in testosterone, then I would want to bring him back up to baseline where he's like at a TRT dose, and then work on the other stuff. But I don't really consider that. Doing a cycle. That's just getting yourself back to where you were when you're, where you should be at.
How often would you suggest somebody get their blood work done, their labs done?
I tell my clients to get it done every 90 days.
Okay, so frequent.
Yeah, that's my requirement with my guys. I make them get their blood work done every 90 days.
Now, is that full panel or is it?
I don't worry with hormones that much, because if you're on hormones, why
Yeah.
It is pointless. I'll have them check estradiol just to see where their estrogen's at. I'll have them check their thyroid, make sure their thyroid's functioning. But it's just all the other stuff that we talked about, kidneys, liver, lipids, the metabolic panel, making sure that your hematocrit and hemoglobin aren't out of control, kidneys, things like that.
So do you have them take a more broad panel annually?
The broad panel, well, see, a lot of guys just don't have the money to burn on it.
Yeah.
That's the issue that you run into. But I usually suggest that they go in. Usually you'll have one physical covered per year under your insurance. Most insurance will give you one physical per year. So I just tell them to go into the doctor and get a physical done. Okay. At the year mark.
Is that how most people are doing it, or are they using, companies like Marek and stuff like that?
Most people are using companies like Marek because they don't want to get a lecture from their doctor.
Yeah, well, I know that's kind of why it's there, because the panels that we have set up, there's one that's like a full big broad panel, and then there's like a follow-up panel, which it's cheaper, right?
Yeah, the Marek panels are nice. I have one of my clients send me one where it has all the like what if you're out of line, it'll have a suggestion of what you should do, what supplements you should take.
40 some pages worth.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And when I used to use another company, and I still use the same doctor I've always used, right? But the issues that I was running into was, and it's nothing against my doctor, but I would go in to see him, and then he would take the labs and then call me, 2 weeks later, and either yell at me or tell me it's good. But I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
Where I started getting independent labs done that I would just privately pay for, and then I'd take it here and give it to him, and now we can talk about it, right? Because some things, and I found this because I compare my doctor Serrano, so I would compare what he'll say to what Marek says, right? So that's kind of my check and balance with the company that's supporting the podcast to make sure they're actually doing good work.
Well, Serrano seems to be aware and understand what's going on in our community.
Yes, and there's been things that, and I can't give specific examples, but there's been some things that like this is off, but that's not the problem. It's because that thing.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that this is the problem. And most kind of would, unless they really know their way around that. Marek was able to pick up on those things too, but unless there's, now I trust him to be able to call me and say this is fucked up or not fucked up, but it's also really, really fucking cool to have it, to be able to say, here you go.
Yep.
And have that in front of for that whole time, to where when Marek provides what you're talking about, the report or whatever it is.
Yeah, that report is pretty badass. I've never seen anything like that from anywhere else.
Well, it fucks some people up too, because they'll look at it and think, oh my God, this is going to cost like $3,000 a month. And it's not prioritized in the report, but at least it shows here's some potential things lifestyle wise, because everybody thinks it's going to be a medication or something like that. But a lot of it's lifestyle, controlling, fucking, we already talked about blood pressure. Controlling blood pressure is huge. And I can go on a rant about this one. You can go buy a blood pressure cuff at fucking Walmart. It's not that hard.
I have when my clients do their check-ins, I make them send their blood pressure readings in. I have them track their blood pressure, and I have them track their glucose levels, so I can keep an eye on both of them.
Really?
Yeah.
When do you have the glucose done?
Fasted. Okay. I have them check it fasted and then keep track of it. And if I start seeing fasted glucose levels rising, then, it's not necessarily, that there's insulin resistance, but it's, it's another situation where it's a canary in the coal mine. It's a time to go get an A1C test done and make sure that we're okay. Mm-hmm. Make sure that insulin resistance isn't on the rise. But we can, if we get out ahead of it, we can, insulin resistance is pretty easy to fix a lot of times.
Where are you seeing the problems with the way people are cycling stuff now?
The issue
in the bodybuilding community.
In the bodybuilding community, well, you already cited tren. Everybody's in love with tren. I don't know why people want to blast huge amounts of tren.
Yeah,
I just don't understand it.
Well, it's strength. I don't understand.
There's a difference between bodybuilders and gym bros. Like I talk to a lot of pro bodybuilders, and what gym bros think pro bodybuilders take is not what pro bodybuilders take. So. There's these ridiculous notions that what pro bodybuilders are doing and they're not actually doing, and then like the gym bro community is just in love with tren. I don't know why gym bros think that more side effects equals better.
Yeah,
and I'm not just saying that tren doesn't have some value or some merit. It certainly does. It does some unique things very well that we can't do with other compounds. But it's really, for me, what it does unique. If I'm going to, let me back up. So if I'm going to roll the dice and take something that's more toxic, it better damn well have some unique benefit that I can't get from something else. And tren does have that. So it seems to be a thermic uncoupler of some sorts, where it increases metabolism. I think through sort of like DMP, making mitochondrial function less efficient. This is just my speculation, but everybody that's run tren knows how you get hot when you run tren. So that would be my speculation of what's going on there. It does seem to, it strongly suppresses glucocorticoids. So if you're in a state where your stress Contest prep would be a good example of that. It is protective. I mean, if you look how it's used in cattle, they use it in feedlots, where that's a very stressful, where they're taking the cattle off to slaughter. If they give it to the cattle in the last, I think it's 60 days before slaughter, because they're in a stressful situation where they might not be getting as much food, and it preserves muscle, it lowers cortisol, and
Yeah.
So that sounds like contest prep to me. So if I'm going to use it, I'm going to use it as a tool on contest prep. When off season, you leverage something safer. But it seems to be this obsession with tren. I don't know what the deal is. Tren and orals. Guys, like, they're probably the two worst things for your health.
Oh yeah. I mean, the orals they've been around fucking forever, but that was always, in my world, what you use closer to the meat.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, running A-bombs 4 weeks before a powerlifting meet is way different than running them 365 days a year.
Yeah, yeah. The little statement I used to tell myself is that other people as well, is you lower the jabs and you up the tabs, right? If it's just based upon half-life, right? I mean, if it's got a longer half-life, what's it really going to do a week before, 2 weeks before?
But Anadrol would be an example. It does something uniquely well that you can't do with anything else, and that is a CNS drive for strength promotion. I mean, nothing makes you stronger than Anadrol. There isn't, maybe halotestin, I don't know. But Anadrol is the king of that world, so there is a compelling reason to roll the dice and use that going into a meet.
Now, because that's fast acting, would it be better used just on the heavier days?
Potentially. I mean, you could lower the stress on your system just using it as a pre-workout. That is something that I have, done myself in the past, is used orals as a pre-workout, for a lagging body part or something that I need to do on a heavy day, or, and you are taking stress off the liver and your organs and whatnot doing that.
Would you be able to run them longer because of that?
Probably.
I mean, that would be what I would think.
Yeah, probably. So, like, for example, if you were coming in to do a heavy deadlift day and you wanted to run it on that day, to get a little extra out of it, that could be a strategy.
Have you noticed anything with your biological age getting older as far as how you tolerate the PEDs?
I mean, everything's different, man.
I know.
I can't handle orals anymore. I just, they make me sick. They make me feel awful. When I was younger, I could just, pop D-balls all day long and it didn't bother me. But yeah, I can't. I pretty much only at the very end of contest prep, I would use it. So I mean that would make sense, because your liver probably, it's the same reason why you can't drink a ton when you're older. Your liver probably isn't as efficient as it was when it was 21. It's got some miles on it. So I save it for contest prep.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the big difference that I notice. Insulin sensitivity, once again, going back to that, that's not what it was when I was younger. Food would be the thing that you have to be more careful with as you get older.
How so?
Because of insulin resistance seems to pile up quicker. Like I notice, like, older guys, like when I have them measure their glucose levels, there's only so long you can push the diet before they start having rising insulin resistance, and you got to pull back. That doesn't seem to happen in younger guys.
Other things that you've noticed?
As I've gotten older, with
what about just recovery in general?
I train 6 days a week still. I have noticed, like, big, heavy compound movements. Like, I can't squat, deadlift, bench press like I used to. If I go in and do a heavy set of deadlifts, I'm buried for days afterwards. I used to deadlift a ton when I was younger, but I really, like, to me, like, I start weighing out the cost versus benefit, like, of blowing myself out doing a heavy set of deadlifts. To me, I just don't even do them anymore.
I was going to say, is it even necessary?
I don't think it is for bodybuilding. I know it's a controversial. I don't even do barbell squats anymore. I really just, for the most part, like, there is a fatigue cost to those big, heavy compound movements. Like, you just think about it. Like, if you do a heavy set of deadlifts and then you try to train the rest of your back afterwards, you're toast.
Yeah. No, I get it. I completely understand it.
I mean, you know. So,
oh, yeah.
So I'd rather keep some gas in the tank and be able to do more with my barbell rows or my dumbbell rows. I feel like for me as a bodybuilder, I'm probably getting more out of that than I am blowing myself out on a single heavy set of deadlifts.
Oh, I believe so. 100%. Yeah, I believe so.
So, I mean, that's another thing too, is fatigue management and energy management. You know, right in the moment, I'm using up all my gas on that one exercise.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the, to me, that's the biggest similarity when I look at bodybuilding training and strength training, is that it's all still fatigue management.
Yep.
Like, you have to do what you need to do in the gym to create the stimulus and the progress that you need. But if you can't recover from what you're doing, or what you do is so extreme that it inhibits your ability to recover before you can come back to do it again, it's what does that cost, right? And then with what you do, you got a mirror, a scale, body fat. You have ways to see.
Yeah.
Like if you pull squats out and your legs don't fucking shrink, and they actually get bigger, the answer is pretty fucking obvious.
most bodybuilders now, most of the modern bodybuilders you talk to don't squat anymore.
Yeah.
It's hack squats, lunges, leg extensions. I mean, that's pretty much how you train quads now. It seems like maybe stiff-legged deadlifts, maybe for hamstrings.
I've seen the same thing, and I wonder if it's because of what you're talking about. Is there's still systemic fatigue that plays into all this as well?
Well, anytime you're placing heavy load, I mean, you had Dr. Michael, and I'm sure he talked about it, but axial fatigue. But anytime you're placing heavy load on the spine, there is a CNS cost to that.
Yes, exactly. And it's not. I would look at the squat, the deadlift, and things like that. It's not a quad movement.
Yep.
You know, it's kind of like a global movement.
Yep.
Like you squat hard enough, you know, it's hard to do fucking arms after that sometimes. Sometimes that's all you're gonna do.
I always felt too. I mean, I used to be a pretty strong squatter. That was one of my better lifts. But when I was doing squats, I always felt it more in my back and in my ass than anywhere. I never really felt it in my quads that much.
What other things are you seeing that are misconceptions with the PEDs, with people coming through now?
Misconceptions, like some of the.
Do they still think growth is a magic formula?
I mean, growth, it is kind of the magic.
Yeah, I know, but not what people think it is.
Well,
I mean, let me dial that back. Why would you say that?
I mean, there's a reason why every pro is running high doses growth hormone.
Well, let's stop for. What is high doses? Because some people are gonna. I know what some people would say. 20 to 30, IU, and that's what most are not doing.
I just talked to a guy last week that kind of cracked my skull open, but it was gotta be careful what I say. There is a group of bodybuilders, top Olympians, that are running 18 units of Serostim, which is a whole Serostim per day.
How?
And they're running at 12. I mean, the cost alone, I'm like, how the guys, like, I did the math on it. It's like,
well, that's what I'm saying. The cost, and like, how do they tie their shoes? Like, how do they function in life?
We were looking at, on my podcast, was it 2 weeks ago? If you want to check it out, I had my friend Dr. Todd on, but we were looking at the Serostim insert, the package insert that the instructions for HIV patients on how to use it. It was 18 units a day is what they're at.
Yeah, it's high. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looked like a 12-week run of it. So what I've heard from some pros is that they're running 12 weeks on, 12 weeks off of 18 units. And that's what I'm
still going to go back to, like, a common side effect is your hands are gone. Like, you can't feel. Well, is there a mitigation means?
No, I mean it's water retention, I think.
Yeah.
But I tried. I don't even know if I should admit this, but I've already talked about it on my YouTube channel. Last week I tried 15 units a day for four days just to see what happens, and I was so tired. I couldn't keep my eyes open sitting at my desk. I've never been so tired in my life. And I've run higher. I think I've gone up to 10 over a sustained period of time before, and I could not feel my hands. I couldn't type. So for me, like I found that 6 to 8 seems to be the sweet spot.
Where would you say most people fall? I mean, I'm assuming that those are outliers that you're talking about.
I mean, the rule of thumb I've heard from the guys that are pros, and Justin will probably tell you this too, is take as much as you can afford and tolerate. I think that's what the guys at the pro level are doing. I mean, the kids, I'm not encouraging you to do that, but that's what I've heard.
Now that has to then be balanced out because of the blood sugar and all the things that we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there are costs to that. I mean, you're going to have insulin sensitivity issues. You're going to have carpal tunnel. I know just from, I didn't start running growth hormone until, I've been running for about 4 years now. And I went to put on a watch I hadn't worn in several years, and I could not fit my watch band over my hand.
Yeah. What about your shoes?
I already wear a size 15. So
All right, it's okay, all right.
I don't know how much bigger, but I have noticed that my nose has gotten bigger. I've noticed in some pictures, there's definitely some things that have grown. But the hand thing blew me away. I'm like, oh, damn. All you have to do is look at pictures of bodybuilders. Take a look at Flex Lewis pictures sometimes. The dude's got he's like 5'3", and he's got hands like like half Thor. Oh,
yeah, I mean, when I used it, my fucking hands, man. I mean, so at one point, the first time, because I didn't use it till after I quit powerlifting, but it got so bad that I'm like fucking seeing a doctor about this shit, and they're like, "Oh, we need your thoracic spine's all fucked up," and and I'm like, it took me a while to be able to figure out, what this was, and man, I couldn't type. I couldn't hold a fucking dumbbell, and it might have been 8 units. I mean, it was more than 4, and
well, the guys are telling me that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this, that there's something about the Sarastem where you don't get those side effects, but
I had Sarastem.
But I'm just like, it's either 191 amino acids or it's not. Like, it's like there is, I mean, just thinking this through from a scientific perspective, it either is or it isn't. There's no varying degrees of, now the potency may be different, but it either is real growth hormone or it's not. So there's no varying degrees of it, unless it's a 192, which is possible. I don't know, but I don't know. I know some guys, I forget which one it is. One of the pharmaceutical grade growth hormones has a low dose diuretic in it to help with some of that stuff. It's not Sarastem. Maybe it's genotropin. I don't remember.
It is definitely one, because I've heard that. Obviously, one I didn't have fucking access to, by the way. But it wasn't. I would have used that one if it was the one that I had access to.
But I couldn't believe that the prescribed dose for HIV patients.
No, I've heard that, because it's.
I mean, it's what it says in the manual.
Yeah, I mean, it's the hookup I had years ago kind of was from that. So it was so many kits every month that you kind of had to buy because somebody was selling it because they were prescribed to it, and they wanted the money more than they wanted the growth hormone because what they're. So you're kind of locked in, for what you're going to have to be able to get there, and it was I believe it was 4, like it was a kit a week.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to like, how in the fuck is that prescribed that? And then it started to make sense when, I looked at kind of the same thing that we asked. What is I'm like, how in the fuck are you being prescribed this at this dose? And that's what it is. And so then it's like, well, how come your hands aren't fucking, like, what's the difference?
Well, I mean, we're also taking a bunch of other growth agents. We're eating a ton of food.
Yeah.
You're in a caloric surplus. You're taking anabolics. You're taking insulin. I mean,
that don't matter though. There's
a bunch of other crap going on. I don't know. At the end of the day, like, I think this is the part that I try to impart on young guys, and they don't get. The secret is that there really is no secret.
Yeah.
It's just hard work and a grind. It just takes a long time to put on that size. I talked about it earlier before you were in here, but you look at a guy, Justin talks about this sometimes too, but you look at a guy like Nick Walker. Had one of the most impressive runs of putting on size, 100 pounds of stage weight in 9-10 years, something like that. But you do the math on it, it averages out to 10 pounds a year. But it's not linear either. So I mean, he probably put on first year, 20, and then 15, then 12, then 8, then 5. But this is just say for simple math. Let's just say 12 pounds per year was a good year for him. That's 1 pound a month. That's a quarter pound per week. That is imperceivable in the mirror. You can't go to the mirror and see a quarter pound of weight gain in the mirror. Mm-hmm. And I think like young bodybuilders just get impatient and they're like, I'm not seeing progress. I'm not seeing progress. You just have to commit yourself to the grind. And really there's these tenets to bodybuilding. It's having your diet buttoned up, training hard. You use the anabolics as a tool. You rest, you recover, you repeat. It's really a boring, monotonous sport. And the guys that do really well at it tend to be, at least from what I've seen, are introverts that thrive on this routine where they just get up and do the same thing over and over and over again every day. And that's really what it is. And nobody wants to hear that.
No, and for me, when I was going through that, and the respect that I had after doing it for whatever it was.
I mean, I'm sure it's the same way with strength. It takes a long time to grind your way up.
It is, but it isn't, right? So it's that that grind is way fucking harder than people think.
Yep.
And this isn't being negative towards the strength. It's a different type of fucking grind. I mean,
yep.
for me, the repetition of that fucking shit, day in and day out, and it was brutal.
Eating chicken and rice 6 times a day,
yeah,
day after day, month after month, year after year is not fun.
No, and all the other things on top of that. So the carb cycling was kind of a war on me.
Yeah.
Right, because it's like fuck. It was easier if it was just 5 meals a day, the same goddamn thing all the time, than having to actually wave this thing, each day, which created some kind of variety, but it was just enough variety to be able to piss me off even more, right? It's just make the grind harder, and it's I think everybody should do it. I really do. I think they should go through it to be able to have respect for the people who do it, to be able to know that this grind it's different and it's really fucking hard. So I can sit here and say the training programming part is easy. Sure. That's fucking not the grind. That's the grind is, oh my God.
The grind's the food.
All the time.
Yep.
And it just doesn't fucking stop. It's just repetitive over and over and over.
Well, everybody wants the PEDs to be the answer. It's the food, really. That's what separates bodybuilders from everybody else. It's the food. And that part is really hard. I remember watching the videos of you getting in shape with Justin.
Yeah.
That was, you look like a bodybuilder.
I like I said, I like the discipline.
You should have gotten on stage.
That's what Justin said, but I'm not fucking doing it. I got holes everywhere. Holes in my pecs, holes on. But I will say this, because I did have this conversation with Justin. I didn't know because I competed when I was in college. So we're going way the fuck back, like fucking early 90s or some shit like that. Mm-hmm. And never even went to a show after the last one I did. Like, not even as a participant, like watching YouTube would be like the extent of it, pros and shit like that. And so he's like, man, you should do a show. Because the first thing I told him is I want to do this, but I don't want to do the last 4 weeks. Because I was smart enough to know, even from powerlifting, the last 4 weeks are brutal no matter what you do. That's where the greatest risk is. If it's diuretics, or in powerlifting, it's, when you're going to lift the heaviest weights to peak and, that kind of stuff. And he kept kind of pushing it. Like, I ain't fucking going to do that because I'm going to look like fucking shit. I got tears all. Then I went to a show a few years later, just a regular local show. And I was like, what the fuck? I mean, there's definitely people there that should be there.
Yeah, and there's some people that shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'm trying to be very nice and selective in my words, because I don't know, some people that are up there that look like they shouldn't be up there, I don't know what their path was to get up there, right? So I don't want to, but there's some people that I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't have lost. I wouldn't have been last. So I see where he was coming from.
I think there's some dudes that wake up on Wednesday and decide they're going to do a show on Saturday.
Yeah.
I've seen that before.
Yeah. And I did like the grind, the discipline, and all that, because and it did it for a long enough time, but at a certain point, and this could just be, I like to lift heavy for singles. So I have a problem there. I have an addiction there. So there's that thing where I couldn't really do that, with all the other stuff that was going on there. But my entire life was dictated by this. And when you're, for me, because I wasn't used to, you're more used to it than I was. When I'm to a point where you're hungry, right? Because this is just part of it. You're fucking hungry. Then you eat a meal and you're not hungry, and then 5 minutes after the meal, you're fucking hungry. Then you're just staring at a wall for like an hour and a half, just waiting for the next. My brain got to a point. Now, I will say each time I came back down to get leaner, it was at a lower body fat. Mm-hmm. Like the first time down at like 10%, my brain was like, fucked, like I'm worthless. Next time it was like 8. And then it gets easier. It probably gets easier. You probably get used to it.
Yeah, it gets easier each time.
And, but I was happy to not do it anymore. Let's put it that way. But there's a lot of things I kept from it. This is why I think everybody should go through it at least once, because you get reacquainted to better food choices, better food habits, not choices, better food habits. Where it's easy to fall out of that. Well, you did for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's easy to fall out of that habit, right? You keep it for a little while, then you kind of half keep it. And then when it's all fucking gone, it's all gone.
Yeah, it's all gone.
Yeah, then to get it. Yeah, then to get it back, you either have to be super disciplined, and some people are, but it's still it's more of a grind, to get it back. But once you get it back, it's easier to not let it all the way go. Let it go all the way. Let it go all the way. Then had you not. That's why I see a lot of powerlifters when they do, because they go through this, everybody goes through this, not everybody, but most go through this phase. Like they retire and then they have an identity crisis. I'll just be honest. They have an identity crisis. They don't know what the fuck to do. So they're going to try bodybuilding and get super lean. Then they'll get super lean, and then some will hold it, some will come and rebound all the way back out, but most of them will maintain half of that, which is a good thing, right? Where if they don't do anything, they just stop, have the identity crisis, then they're fucking drinking beer, eating pizza, and just fucking slap. And then they end up being those people we were talking about earlier that maybe they do get 65 years old and they're fucking croaking of a heart attack because they're in terrible fucking shape.
Yeah. When
at one point in time, they were actually in pretty decent shape for a big dude, whatever it was, and just gone, crashed. So it's that ability, or I should say, that journey is worth doing.
It is a mental challenge, that is for sure. I remember Justin telling me about the Dave Tate rule for cheat meals.
Yeah, I made him change the rule. Well, it's just keep in mind I wasn't doing a show, right? So I had no. Had I been doing a show, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I had no consequence to anything I was going to do.
Justin was telling me if you technically don't stop eating, it's one meal.
That's what it was. So it was the last meal, and it was before. It was also before the super high days. The super high days made the cheat meal, like you said, not even worth really doing.
Yeah.
Like, give me a fucking ice cream scoop, and that's fucking cool. Before that, you're just on the regular rotation. The other funny thing too was I kept asking him for a cheat meal, because I worked with other people before, and the cheat meals are pretty, they came pretty soon. And he's like, what did he say? It was something so fucking funny. He's like, you have enough glycogen built up in your system, you don't need a cheat meal for another fucking 3 months. Some stupid shit like that. And I'm like, okay, fuck, I guess there's not one coming. And, but it was one of the first ones, and went to Lone Star. Fucking ate so much that you feel that heartbeat in your stomach. And then it was either raisins or I had like peanuts, raisins, M&Ms. I forget what it was, but as long as I kept eating something, to me, the meal continued, right? Because back home, I still had, because I'm writing everything down that I want to eat that I can't eat, right? Fucking stupid shit like chocolate Pop-Tarts. You crave things that you normally would never eat anyhow.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking ho-hos. Haven't had them since you were like 8, but now you're craving the shit out of them. So I have all this shit. I'm like, I have to eat all this, but I'm a fucking heart. So I just kept eating like peanut M&Ms or raisins. like every 5 minutes raisin, and it just was not good. It started like at 4 and ended at about 12:30.
I'm sure your stomach was awful the next day.
It was fucking crushed. And when he asked me, and I told him, then that it changed, the rule changed. It became like a time limit or something.
Yeah, he has 90 minutes or 1,500 calories, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It was brutal. It was bad, but it's fucked up, man. Because your head, my head, it's like an eating disorder thing. You know, it's like you feel horrible, but I'm still fucking eating the shit.
I build a cheat meal into my diets for people. I just, for nothing else, psychological. I feel like if I can get people to last until 6 days, and then they can have a cheat meal, it keeps them on track better. They're less. But I do limit it. I tell them to try to keep it cleanish. Go have a steak and a potato, or go have a burger and fries, or something like that. Don't go full in on a pizza or donuts or something like that.
The things I struggled with. I shouldn't say struggle with. The things that fucked my life up the most, that probably shouldn't have, were because the meals I scheduled the meals at times, right? And that time's going to happen no matter what. So a lot of times I'm not leaving where I'm at because I don't have enough time to get where I want to go and to come back. Like obsessive shit like that, which I don't think is necessary, but maybe it is mentally. Because you're just dialing. I see both sides of that argument of why it's not necessary, but at the same time, every time you let that lapse a little bit, at least in my head, if I let it lapse a half hour, then it means the next time it's going to be 35 minutes. Then the next time 40 minutes. Then maybe I start skipping. So it was that mental fuck that I wouldn't want to let myself go down, discipline-wise, that may not necessarily have to be there.
I mean, when I'm on contest prep, I get locked in like that. I think that's the only way you can go. The off season, I'm not as OCD about it, but I think that is a good attitude to have if you want to win. I mean, the people that succeed in life have that level of discipline and attention to detail.
When you're in the off season, how do you just, I don't want to say track the macros, but are you just going off of what let's just say macros are for that day, or are you trying to stay within the, say, 5 meals or whatever it is?
Here lately, I haven't been, because I've been traveling a lot. It's harder, but that year when I had that really crazy rebound, I was perfect with everything. I literally treated it like the contest prep. Everything was weighed and measured. Every single meal was down to the button. I knew exactly what I was, and that's probably why I had the results I had. But I'll be honest, this year I haven't been as disciplined. I would say I'm like 90% compliant now. I bring my food with me, or if I do eat out, I try to eat clean. But you can't measure when you go to the Texas Roadhouse or whatever.
No, but you still have an idea.
I'll have a steak and a plain potato or something.
Yeah, so
I'll look at the menu and say, I probably shouldn't eat that. That's okay.
Okay. With from the nutritionist side, when you start working with clients, where's the biggest problem there? Not eating enough or eating too much? I
mean, you have two brands of people, man. You have the perma bulkers and the perma cutters. I see both of them. You have the guy that's like terrified of getting fat. You have that dude. I work with those guys. I see those guys that come to me. I can't gain anything, and then you get them 4 weeks into an off-season phase, and they're like, "Man, I'm getting fat. I think it's time to cut." And I'm like, "No, dude. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing." And then you got the perma bulkers. They're like, I need 10 more pounds. 10 more pounds. They get so. I think both of them get hyper focused on the scale.
Okay.
Both get hyper focused on the scale, but more often than not, it's the perma bulker, I would say, and people severely underestimate what their body fat is at. Okay. The guy comes to me and is like, "Yeah, I think my body fat's 10%," and I'm like, maybe 20. I don't know about 10, but Justin talks about it. But there really should be. What I've seen with people when it comes to nutrition is they try to do both at the same time. One of the things I absolutely despise is I hear people talk about recomping. And I'm like, I mean, it can be done to a certain degree, but I feel like you either should be cutting or you should be in a mass phase. And when you try to do both at the same time, you end up doing both of them not very well.
Yeah.
Is what ends up happening, and you end up with a half-ass result. The people that I see that get the best results are the ones that commit to an off season and then commit to a cut after the off season and then repeat that process.
Well, wasn't the only way you could actually do both would mean that you would have to have lost lean body mass that you originally had in the first place?
I mean, you'd have to be in a deficit to burn fat. So you have to be in a deficit, but just in a slight deficit. I mean, Trenbolone would probably help you violate that, because technically Trenbolone, you can grow muscle in a deficit. So that is possible. You could trade fat for muscle. I think that's why a lot of guys get obsessed with Tren. But there's only so much muscle.
How much though? Like
Not
half
much.
a pound, if that?
Not much.
Quarter pound?
Not much. I mean, that's why they gave it, once again, that's why they gave it to the cattle,
Yeah.
because a lot of times they're not getting the food that they need in the feedlot, or being transported on a truck going to slaughter, and it helps them maintain that mass.
Have you seen an increase in injuries with people who are using Tren?
No, I don't know that it makes any difference in injuries. Usually where I see injuries happen is towards the end of contest prep. You think about the guys that have gotten hurt, like the bodybuilders just look at Dorian Yates. When he's gotten hurt is when he was at the end of contest prep.
Okay.
I think, I believe when he tore his bicep and tore his tricep, it was all at the end of contest prep when you're dry. Not a lot of body fat. I mean, that seems to be when guys are tearing muscles, at least what I've seen.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is because in the strength world, that seems to correlate, but also so does Tren with just about everybody.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
so
I could see where if you had...
I don't know if it's a spurious correlation, though. You know what I'm saying? Just because one is there at the same time as the other one.
I could see where if you had a bunch of CNS drive and didn't actually have connective tissue that could handle
Okay.
that where you could rip something. I mean, I remember my very first time using Anadrol. I probably shouldn't admit this. I think it was like 18, 19. I remember like wanting to bench press 225, and I could not get to 225. And like within a week, I was banging out reps with 225. Now my connective tissue didn't change, but I got stronger. I didn't within a week grow a bunch of new muscle. That takes longer than that. So it was simply just neural drive at that point. So I think in a situation like that, possibly you could get into tears.
Okay.
But I would imagine like where I see it is with guys when they're depleted, when they're dehydrated, things like that is where I see tears happen.
So we've kind of gone through the PEDs, the nutrition. So the misconceptions of bodybuilders that will come to you with their training, what's fucked up there?
I go back to it again. It's like, I don't know what it is with bodybuilders, like, but they are so stupid with their training. Like, guys can't make up their mind if they're a bodybuilder, if they're a powerlifter, if they're a CrossFitter, if they're an Olympic lifter. And I'm like, why are you doing clean and jerks? You're not an Olympic lifter. It's not doing anything for you for bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Why are you doing 1 rep maxes when you're a bodybuilder? It's not doing anything for you. If you want to be a powerlifter, go be a powerlifter. I think that's the biggest mistake I see, is that guys are not dialed in and focused in on their training.
That's interesting to me, because if they're hiring a coach, you would think they would want to be focused in on the training part, because it's...
Well, everybody gets everybody gets hyper focused on the PEDs. Is what I've seen. If I could pick one thing to fix, it'd be the diet. That's going to have the most impact.
Well, that's assuming they're doing the others, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're not training, they can diet all they want. They're not going to create
Right. I mean, you can train half-ass.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And if you have a good diet, you can get results. Is from what I've seen. But that's the biggest mistake I see with training. It's just
so. Will you say, from what you're seeing, the overemphasis is all on PEDs, not on the diet, not on the training?
Oh yeah, especially with young guys, they mystify the PEDs, and they get over focused on the PEDs.
Wow.
They just think that that the reason why they're not a pro is because that pro is taking 5 grams and 20 units of GH, and that's why they're not a pro.
Interesting.
I'm like, you can go take 5 grams. You're not going to turn into Phil Heath in 2 weeks. It's not going to happen.
How, if they stay with you for a longer period of time, how long does it take them to realize that's not the key?
I think as soon as people, like, if I can get somebody through a 16-week, like usually I'll budget out a 16 to 20-week phase for cutting or for bulking. And if I can get somebody through a 16 to 20-week phase where they actually see results with a focused diet and focused training, the light switch seems to flip on after that. And they're like, holy crap, I look completely different. I'll send them that. I keep the before picture and the after.
Yeah.
And I'll send them, and I'm like, look how different you look already. And guys are like, holy crap, I can't believe I've progressed that much in 20 weeks. And then it seems to click. If I can keep them consistent. That's always the part. I get a lot of people that get impatient and give up after, 3-4 weeks. They want to see progress.
Wow. That's interesting, man, because my first reaction to that was, this is really fucking it. My first reaction was, wow, that's actually kind of cool. It's only 20 weeks. Like, I'm surprised that it's only taken 20 weeks, but then you hit me with this. Most people after the 3 weeks can't handle it.
Well, that's why I like a lot of times I start people off with a cut.
Yeah.
Because that's something where you can see immediate results in 16 to 20 weeks. Mm-hmm. And, unless you're super lean already. But a lot of times, like most people that come to you, you know how it is, man. They're pudgy and out of shape.
Yeah.
If I can get them through a 16 to 20 week cut, get them to see in the mirror how much different they look, and then you have insulin sensitivity's improved. They're in a good spot to rebound, and then actually put on some lean mass at that point. I think that is something where you can see some immediate gratification. Big part of coaching is psychological too. It's just as much psychological as it is the tweaking the diet and the training. So it's getting people excited where they can see results. So I feel like a lot of times I'll start people off with a cut and get them leaned up first. And I hear a lot of other coaches talking about that too, what they do now, and then they can see some immediate results, and then we can use that as a springboard into further success.
Is there an over, what I'm going to say, the fucking SARMs and shit like that, is there?
Oh my God, the SARM stuff is just nuts.
Well, I know. Is it as nuts as what I perceive it could be? I don't follow that shit that much, right? Because to me, it's just fake steroids that don't work. If you're going to do it, just take the fucking real shit. But are the younger people just drive into those things like...
Yeah, and it's there,
like fucking Androstenedione or whatever the fuck it was when I was younger.
Yeah, which was just a steroid.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just a shitty one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody gets obsessed with the SARMs. What people don't realize is that steroids are SARMs too. Mm-hmm. They're ones that actually work. They're selective androgen receptor modulators. There's a reason why the pharmaceutical companies toss those. They're experimental drugs that were tossed in the trash because they didn't work, or they had side effects that they weren't planning on. In theory, the theory behind SARMs was good. It's pharmaceutical companies researching a way to promote to selectively bind to the androgen receptor without all the side effects. I mean, we want that, right? But they didn't work, and a lot of times what I see is the SARMs end up having worse side effects and worse suppression than the actual, using real PEDs did, and guys end up just completely screwed up from them, and then you have to fix them to get them out of it. So yeah, I don't know. It seems like the FDA is going to start putting their eye on SARMs now. Is what I've heard.
When you say screwed up from them, as in how?
Like HTPA is suppressed. Just like they ran a cycle test. Guys, I see guys have weird estrogenic side effects where they get gyno and stuff like that from SARMs. I've seen all kinds of weird crap.
So they're getting the side effects without the fucking benefits.
They're getting all the side effects without the benefits.
Wow, that's great.
I mean, some of them work to a certain degree. Some of the peptides are okay. But I mean, there's the tried and true stuff that actually works. And you talk to any pro bodybuilder and you ask them about SARMs and they're like, what? I don't even know what half of them are.
Yeah, well, I don't. That's my point. Is with that. What about the peptides?
I mean, some of the peptides are pretty neat. Some of the healing peptides I run, like BPC 157 and TB 500 and stuff for healing injuries. Some of them are interesting. I do use those sometimes, like if I have a muscle tear or something. Maybe it's a placebo. I don't know.
I was going to say, do you really think it makes a difference or not?
I mean, it seems like it heals faster, but part of me is like, it's not hurting anything.
Yeah.
BPC 157 is it's producing digestive enzymes. It's the reason why your gut and your mouth heal faster, and so in theory, it speeds up soft tissue injury healing. In theory, if you have a muscle tear or whatnot, it should heal the muscle tear up faster. I have seen some protocols where I've had guys work with clinics that prescribe them those and have HGH coming off of injuries and get themselves back really quick.
Now there's the HGH though too.
Yeah, HGH.
So,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Is it that, or is it the?
It's probably the HGH. It's probably the HGH. I mean, if you throw enough shit against the wall, something's going to stick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's probably HGH.
What about, is there the over obsession with supplements still?
Yeah, I mean, the supplement industry's come a long way. There's actually stuff that works now.
Yeah.
I mean, 20 years ago, it was just a bunch of trash that didn't work. I mean, berberine certainly works. NAC certainly works. I've seen it in the blood results. I do think that people get, one thing I get a little aggravated with is I get guys that get over-reliant on protein powders, and they don't even get a good quality protein powder. I get guys that come to me have all sort of gut issues, and they're just getting the cheap, whatever cheap protein powder they get the way concentrate that they get at Walmart or whatever, and then they come to me and they're like, my stomach's upset, I'm gassy, I'm bloated. I'm like, well, it's all the lactose that's in the protein powder you're eating, or you have an intolerance to whey. Let's pull that out and see what happens. That can be an issue. I do think people can get overly obsessed with supplements.
Yeah.
But you need vitamins and minerals and certain things. I know they looked at I don't remember what the study was I saw, but where they had a group that took multivitamins and one that didn't, and there was really no different in health outcomes between the two. I've certainly seen fish oil have an impact.
Yeah.
On blood work. I mean, you can look at blood work and see impact of certain.
Yes.
Vitamin D is certainly something that has an impact. Vitamin C certainly has an impact. Glutathione has an impact. I mean, there's stuff that does work.
Yeah. Well, I think the key thing there is the blood work as well, because as I told you earlier, I take a lot of different shit that, Serrano will recommend, or, other people will recommend, but I have the blood work to be able to show, did this actually make, first off, why am I taking it? Let's be the first question. Like, why is it being used? If you're just taking it to take it, then that's probably stupid, right? Why is it being used? And then is there a marker to be able to show if this is actually making a difference or not? I mean, you
can see, like I said, like with NAC, you can look, I've seen it in blood panels where I've seen ALT and AST and GGT come down after running NAC. I mean, that's pretty apparent.
Yeah, well, D's pretty fucking obvious too, because most people are fucking pathetic with where their D is.
Yeah, most people are deficient in vitamin D. There are others. I've seen people run astragalus for kidney, and I've seen creatinine and EGFR numbers come down from running astragalus. So it seems to work as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, there are supplements that work.
What about for the hemoglobin?
I mean, there's just not a lot that brings it down. I mean, there's some evidence that telmisartan, which is not a supplement, but does lower hematocrit and hemoglobin a bit. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's sort of cost of doing business of PEDs.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how high it gets and staying away from the stuff that elevates it super high.
What would be super high? The reason I'm asking some of these questions is I've heard people justify some numbers that are kind of.
I mean, when it gets over 55, I think that's getting sketchy.
Yeah.
Your hematocrit. I mean, 53 seems to be pretty normal. That's where pretty much everybody that's run, even TRT. The weird thing is, like I've seen with hematocrit and hemoglobin, it doesn't seem to be any different from running 200 milligrams a test to running a gram a test. It's exactly the same, at least what I've seen.
Wow, interesting.
I'd be curious to see what somebody like Dr. Eric has seen, but it doesn't. It seems like it elevates and then it just sort of hangs out at a certain level. I mean, I have a home hemoglobin meter, and I've noticed hydration plays a role in it too. So like my hemoglobin will read higher in the morning than it does in the evening. So it definitely, hydration plays a role in it as well too. So it's not that your hemoglobin has gone down, it's just that your blood is a little more, you're just dehydrated in the morning, so that reading's going to be higher. It's same thing with blood sugar.
That's a good point too, that if you're going to get your blood work done, you should be hydrated.
Yep.
You know, because it's once I fucked up and I wasn't. And it's like, oh my God. And then
yeah, a lot of people think fasting
yeah.
blood work means don't drink.
Yes.
That's not true. You want to be hydrated. You're going to throw all those numbers off. Your hemoglobin, hematocrit are all going to be high. Your blood sugars are going to be high if you're dehydrated.
All right. Different direction topic here with your YouTube and the podcast episodes. How do you guys determine what the fuck to talk about?
Half the time I just pull it out of my ass. The podcast, the stuff that I actually take the time to make, like, I wish I had more time. I like doing the deep dive videos where I actually go through and research things. And I was doing more like lecture style presentations in my older ones where I would actually go through and like do research and present, the pharmacology of certain substances.
Yeah, those are, I watched a bunch of those.
People don't seem to like those. But
really?
Those are the ones I like doing. It's funny. They don't get a lot of views out of the gate, but they get steady views. People come back and watch those. They're still, like, I'll see those videos still performing even though they've been up for a year and a half or whatever.
So the ones where you guys are just talking about random shit get better views from this jump?
It just depends. The ones that get the biggest views are worth steroid videos.
Yeah.
Those are always the one. But the podcast, like, I'll just jot down a few notes of things that I want to talk about, and then they just kind of take a life of their own. We just recently started doing the podcast, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I keep adding people to the podcast. I'm going to have like 8 people in here soon before it goes, but I think Roman Fritz, IFBB Pro, is going to be on with me this weekend.
Okay.
And then I'm doing a live one with Justin on Sunday, where we're going to do a live Q&A for nutrition. So
no, see, to me those are easier ones to kind of like strategize and plan out. The other ones where it's just like 4 random topics of shit that's going on right now.
Yeah,
like those are the ones that are intriguing to me because it's probably because I don't follow that shit. So if I had to do it, I'd have to spend the time to go look it all up to even be halfway equated with it.
Yeah, I'll go look. I try to stay away from the YouTube drama. There seems to be a lot of bodybuilding drama right now. In the negativity, I figure there's enough negativity out there. I love bodybuilding. I love talking about the sport, but
that's a tough one, right? Because it's I don't want to say never, like I never want to do that.
Yeah.
But it does, like the reaction to the reaction to the reaction to somebody's reaction of their reaction videos are fucking get old really fast.
Yeah, I get tired of that stuff, and I try not to be critical of other people.
Yeah.
I just,
that seems to be where the views go though, which is I don't understand.
Well, I mean, my background's in computer science. If you got to think about it from when they write these algorithms, they use an AI a lot of times to decide which videos get put up. And you got to remember, like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all this, their job is to maximize profit. And they're going to put the stuff up that's going to get the most views and get the most ad clicks. And what gets the most views every freaking time? All you have to do is watch the news. Controversial stuff that's going to get people stirred up. So I think the algorithm just picks up on that. I don't think there's actually somebody back there pushing the button. It's literally they're just feeding stuff that's getting the most views. And so they've determined that they'll see trends on how a video's trending, and then they'll start feeding it into their suggested videos more often because they want to sell more ads.
Yeah. No, I get that, and it's frustrating in a way as a content, whatever you call it, creator.
Yeah.
It's like low-hanging fruit, but then it's also, I tend to think that from the business perspective, actually paying bills, not like the hits don't always pay bills. Like traffic doesn't always pay bills. That the original videos that you were doing, they're always going to get views.
Yep.
So say over a 10-year period of time, they will have more views than a reaction video about a Liver King.
Yep.
Or whatever it's going to be. In the short term, the reaction video, see, this is the game. Like the short term, the reaction video may be able to drive the subscriber count, but I still live in this old-fashioned world where I think that people who like your content will actually engage with it, share it, and tell other people about it.
Yep.
And sometimes I think they forget that. At least I know they do with us.
Yeah.
You know, because that matters. They don't think it matters. Like, I think we all forget. I do. Like, I can't blame everybody else when I do the same fucking thing.
Right.
You know, we forget how much that really matters, because in that long term, that's going to have more power.
Yep, I agree.
Than the short term. You know, it's like a one-night stand to a fucking marriage, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I look at social media as a marketing tool. And if the Liver King reaction video is not going to get me bodybuilding coaching clients, it's not going to get me consultation calls. Educating people, sharing a bit of information with somebody that they may not have heard before, that will get me stuff. I do try to do some things that are fun and entertaining, just because.
Well, it's still, either way, it's still, and this is the game, right? It still casts a wider net.
Yep.
If it's entertaining, it's a wider net. So maybe it's not a customer or client now, but it could be later down the road.
Yeah, I've noticed with people when they come to my channel, I'll catch them with one video, and then I notice that they'll go back through and watch all the old stuff.
Oh, I can see that. I did it.
Yeah.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, I noticed that. So that has some value as well.
What is other content from the education side that you're looking to put out?
I would like to go back in and actually do some research stuff on supplements, and actually, talk about that, talk more about nutrition, talk more about training. I just invested in some camera equipment. I want to get in the gym and start doing more training videos. I get a lot of questions about training, although I'm looking at other channels. I don't think training videos perform that well.
They don't, but everything, and well, you've been around long enough, even with being out of it, there's a cycle,
Yep.
to all of it. Like the training stuff will be real popular for a while, then nobody will give a fuck. And it's like, even like the methods, right? Like high volume will be super popular for a while, then boom, it drops. And then all of a sudden the next low volume, high intensity model becomes the next big thing, and it just kind of rotates.
I don't think people would, there's a million people posting videos of themselves working out on social media.
Yeah.
I don't really care. I don't think anybody wants to see me lift weights.
No.
But what I do think that people might be interested in is like going in, explaining like how the proper form is on we were talking about doing barbell rows earlier, or how to program out a bodybuilding program. If you wanted to do dog crap training or DC training, if I wanted to go through and show you how to do that in a video and how to program that out and what a workout would look like, or how a high volume workout looks like and how it's programmed, and then talk people through that while I'm working out, I think that would probably carry more weight.
Oh, 100%. If they can see how you would like to see a set done, that carries more weight.
I know me personally, I would find that more interesting.
Well, yeah, I would too. I mean, you can only watch so many fucking videos of people slamming shit around.
I mean, the only videos I'm interested in watching people lift are the guys that are like crazy, crazy strong.
Yeah.
Like a Larry Wheels or something like that that's doing some ridiculous stuff.
Yes. Well, if they're explaining something like this, now I'm a nerd with this shit too. If they're explaining something in a way that I may not have heard before.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
to
say
me.
it's like a low row, right?
Yep.
Where I think at the end of the day, most people that know what they're doing, we're all looking for the same end result. But we're going to tell people how to do it a little bit different. But sometimes the way that we tell somebody doesn't always work. So sometimes you'll pick up how somebody else would cue things and teach things, and you're like, fuck, wow, I never thought about that. That stuff really intrigues me.
I think I went back through and watched Dr. Mike Israel's training stuff like 2-3 times.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gone more to like general content now, like entertainment stuff. But I really that's what got me roped in on him. Is I went in and just like how he explained things and went into detail and his logic behind everything. That really resonated with me. And I read his book, and then I went back and watched the videos again. And it was almost like a college course on how to lift weights.
Yes, and I do think that kind of content, through different messengers and different ways, always has value.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe you connect with him because he's got that scientific type brain that he puts out there, where somebody else may not connect with that. Be like, oh, what the fuck, this PhD guy. But they will connect with somebody else.
I'll be honest, I get tired of making PED videos.
Yeah. Well, after a while, you're going to run out of compounds.
I mean, there's only so much to talk. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I tell guys, like they want to hear about it. I'm like, there's only like, I mean, when you talk to a pro bodybuilder, there's only like 5 or 6 things they use.
There's a question there. What would be, with all the people that you've talked to, what would be the most consistent compounds across the board?
I mean, testosterone. Everybody's taking testosterone, growth hormone. Testosterone, growth hormone at the base of every cycle. Insulin. Pretty much every pro bodybuilder is taking insulin, and then they just pick an anabolic or 2 that they like.
And which of the 2 would be the most popular?
Usually the primary anabolic that I see pros using is either equipoise or Primobolan. And then some guys use DECA or MPP, whatever. But it seems like test. Like if I had to just like tell you the typical pro bodybuilder cycle, it's test, equipoise, GH, and insulin. That's it. That's pretty boring.
That's so fucking funny because it hasn't changed in forever.
I mean, that's what they run, and maybe they'll throw in some Anadrol here and there. They'll sprinkle that or some Anavar in here and there.
Same shit has been for
because it fucking works.
Decades, time over time. But yeah, new compounds, new blends will be made.
It works
all the time. So it's capitalism, right? Marketing. So somebody makes a new blend, and then they can try to make it look like it's better than with just the standard shit that's been working.
Just the boring stuff works.
Crazy, right?
I did
diet-wise, training-wise.
I did when I wasn't lifting weights, I got into jiu-jitsu. That was the thing I got into, and I'm a very mediocre jiu-jitsu practitioner, but like that was the thing I always admired about like the really high-level black belts in jiu-jitsu. They just do simple stuff. It was always the guys that were low-level belts that got obsessed with the complex stuff, like trying to find the secret sauce. The guys that were the high-level practitioners just did basic shit. It was nothing complex.
It's intriguing, right? Because that's everything.
Yep.
Right. It's every profession. It's every sport. It's all that. The people who can do the basics, the shit, consistently, right. Time over time.
I mean, basketball was my sport, and really, outside of being tall and athletic, but really, if you want to play in the NBA, all you have to do is dribble the ball well and shoot. If you can shoot and you can dribble, I mean, Steph Curry is not the most, or Seth, he's not the most athletic guy in the world, but the guy can shoot. So, I mean, it's just basic stuff.
Were there any topics you thought I was going to bring up or questions you thought I was going to ask that I didn't ask?
No, I don't think so.
What if it's I don't want to say a master's lifter, but let's say same person, the same journey that you took, trained when they were younger, had a decade break, then want to start back up again. What would be the 3 most important things that you would tell them they need to do or expect?
It's not, things are not going to move as fast as they did when you were young.
Okay.
I mean, that's first and foremost. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I could eat one less donut and get ripped. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. So you got to be patient. The very first thing it goes back to is you got to get lean first. I think when you're older, we go back to it. I go back to insulin sensitivity again. You got to get lean. You got to get the body fat off. You got to get your insulin sensitivity in a good spot and set yourself up in a place for growth. And I think it took me a good 2 years to get all the fat off, and I had to diet it off in phases. Like I would do like these 12 to 16 week runs, take a diet break, and then do another 12 to 16 run and take a diet break. It was a good 2 years for me to. I think I was almost 300 pounds. And then I dieted down to, I don't know, like 220. And then I'm 280 right now, and I built myself back up to that. But it took a period of several years. You just got to be patient. You got to stay in there. You can't train like you could when you're in your 20s. We talked about that before. And you really have to pay way more attention to the diet. Get your hormones optimized. I see a lot of guys. I would say you have to blast PEDs, but I would definitely make sure that your hormones are in a good spot. And that maybe, even just getting on TRT for a guy whose hormones are buried. If you're in a compromised spot hormonally, it's going to be like trying to fight with one arm tied behind your back. You're not going to get in shape, or it's going to be really difficult to get in shape. So usually the first thing I would do, like with an older guy, is just have them go get some blood work done and make sure, if they're not doing anything, make sure that their hormones are okay. And then we get them optimized there, get the fat off of them, and then start working on building them back up. Train intelligently, diet, make sure that your health is in order, and be patient. Those are the big things for an older guy that's getting back into the gym. And fat loss just takes time. I mean, there's only so much fat. This is another thing. Like if you get yourself in a really obese spot, like I had to drop probably 80 pounds. You're not going to do that in one 16-week run of it. You're just not. I mean, it's just math at the end of the day. If you want to lose 2 pounds of body fat a week, that's 7,000 calories. That's 1,000 calories a day of a deficit you're going to have to create through diet or exercise. And that's probably on the top side. So I would say 2 pounds a week of fat loss is probably 1 to 2 pounds a week of fat loss is the most you can realistically expect if you're getting back in the gym. So it's going to take some time to get it off. You have to be patient.
What would be the easiest way for people to get a hold of you?
Go to anabolicbodybuilding.com. I have all my contact information on there. You can get a hold of me there. I'm on Instagram at Paul K. Barnett.
Do you check your DMs on Instagram, or is it better for them to go through?
So many damn DMs, man. It's like 50. No,
so they'd be better off to go to your website and email you through there.
Email me. You can email me at bigp3rd@gmail.com as well. My contact information is on Instagram and on my website as well.
Okay.
But yeah, don't DM me on Instagram. I get so many DMs.
Yeah, I've made a mental note when I have coaches that help people on to be able to ask this question, because some do check DMs, some don't. Some are just polluted. With that.
I probably get 40, 50 DMs a day.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Yeah, so somebody who's inquiring about your services could get lost, right? So it's easier to go to the website through the email.
Yeah, I feel bad not responding, but there's just, I can't respond to everybody that DMs me.
Yes, and then I've already talked about your content. Your YouTube content is great, so that's worth checking out.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So all those links are in the bio, guys. Any parting thoughts?
No, I appreciate you having me on, man. I was nervous as hell coming up here, man. I'm like, this is like the Valhalla of powerlifting. I've watched you for years, and it's really surreal being here, and I really appreciate you having me on, man. It means a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And guys, we're done.
Anything between 4-week-long mesocycle and an 8-week-long mesocycle, and that includes 1 week baked into each at the end for deloading, seems to be generally a good idea for muscle growth.
Nutrition is probably more important for the hypertrophy if I'm looking at the strength athlete, because if they go through that phase that they're supposed to go through that they don't go through, but then when they do go through, they don't go through it effectively,